Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto got harem with FemSasuke, Tenten, and Hinata? If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 1, it begins. Konoha night time. The village hidden in the leaves, founded by the Senju, the Uchiha and the Uzumaki clans' respective leaders, it's known to produce some of the strongest ninjas of the world. Senju Tobirama, Senju Hiroshima, Uchiha Madara, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Danzo Shimura, Tsukumo Hatake, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade, Uchiha Itachi, and Namikaze Minato. While the village after the Third Ninja Wars is enjoying a peaceful night, one Minato Namikaze is holding on for his dear life from threat only men can face, and anyone that would be hearing his screams would be praying for his life because they know what he is going through. In a hidden cave north from the village. Minato Namikaze, if I get through this alive, I am going to kill you for putting me through this mess when I recovering screams a very frustrated Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze as she's giving birth to her twin children while squeezing Minato's hand. Take it easy Kushina, I'm here for you, you just need to calm down and take deep breaths and push the baby out. Minato soothed his wife, ignoring the crushing of his hand by his wife by screaming on the inside as Jiraiya stands behind Minato trying and failing from keeping the smile on his face. Minato, will you shut up, you don't know what I'm going through now, just shut up, screamed Kushina. Congratulations, ma'am, here is your children, said Tsunade tending to Kushina. Look Minato, aren't they beautiful, replies a very tired Kushina. Not as beautiful as you look right now, says a very proud Minato. Congrats Gaki on both the resistance from an angry Kushina and the mini brats, but what's up with Naruto? His hair has black strips and is a lot spikier, and is that a tail? Jiraiya asks as he notices some odd things about Naruto, and as he reaches over to pull it, the baby starts crying. Jiraiya, let go of my son's tail or I will kill you where you stand, exclaimed Kushina, after which Jiraiya quickly let go and the wailing stopped and she hands the children to Tsunade. An Anbu appears in the cave. Hokage-sama, the council wishes to see you on recent developments. As he says this, he motions to the twins and Kushina scowls as she notices this. How in the nine hells did they know you just gave birth, Kushina? Asks Tsunade. I don't know, but I'm going to find out right now, says Minato, but as he is about to leave, a masked man appeared in the room and shushined out with Kushina, but nobody does anything as the shock of some enemy finding out of the place freezes Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Minato, but soon snap out of their daze and rush to find Kushina once they heard the roar of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and assumed the worst for Kushina. A few moments before with Kushina and the masked man. Why are you doing this? Kushina cried. This world has become nothing, a hate-infested hell, so I'm going to remove it from existence. The masked man replied. To do this, I'm going to need power, so Kyuubi come on out of there. At this point, the masked man and Kushina make eye contact and she notices that this masked assailant possesses the Sharingan. The Kyuubi's chakra completely surrounds her, and then she feels the pain of having the fox ripped from her body. Weakened after the forced extraction, Kushina tries to stall for help. Wait. And masked man directs his attention to her after placing the fox under his illusion. Amazing, you Uzumaki are really something, to be able to survive the Kyuubi ripped from you. Then turning his attention back to the fox he commands it, now, Kyuubi, since you free of your prison, why don't you destroy it so you never have to go back there again? And the Kyuubi happily obliges by striking its claw at Kushina only to roar when he didn't feel the resulting gush under its paw. In a yellow flash, Minato saved Kushina from instant death and said, Kushina, I'm taking you somewhere safe for now, okay? Kushina just nods her head weakly on his shirt, while murmuring thanks to, and with another flash, they leave the not-so-hidden cave. Minato then reappears and confronts the villain. Who are you? Why are you doing this? Tell me. Well, since you asked so nicely, I don't think so, replies the masked man. Minato's eyes narrowed in annoyance and anger at the reply and responded, fine. Then I'll just beat it out of you. After that, Minato let loose one of his special kunai, but was shocked to see the kunai phasing right through his opponent. What the hell, Minato thought in surprise. The masked man suddenly warps to Minato's location, and Minato feels distortion right in front of him and threw a kunai in a different direction in order to analyze his opponent's technique. Just as Minato appears where his kunai was thrown, a warp suddenly appears out of nowhere and reveals the masked man. Damn, it appears that he has even better capabilities in time-space ninjutsu than me. It's going to come down to whose attack is faster, thought Minato. Let's end this now, spoke Minato. Couldn't agree more, replied the masked man. As they charged each other, Minato threw another kunai and ready-to-head-sized Rasengan. The kunai once again phased through the masked man. The masked man was getting ready to grab Minato to end it all. He thought, victory is mine, but he felt a Rasengan attacking him from behind unexpectedly. Wah! He screamed in pain and was on his knees. As the assailant was getting up, Minato suddenly appeared before him with a kunai in hand. How did he get right next to me? Thought the man in fright. Flashback no jutsu. As the Rasengan exploded upon contact, Minato took his chance and marked the masked man with the Hiraishin formula. Kai. Hey, so now what, you going to try to take Kyuubi away from me, said the masked man. No, I've already done so through a contract break seal that I placed on you, said Minato. Grr. Fourth. You may have beaten me today, but I swear that I will always get what I want, one way or another. With that, the masked man warps away, leaving Minato to deal with freshly exorcised and very angry Kyuubi. Minato quickly teleports to his wife's location, then to his children's location to make his family whole. Minato takes Kushina to their children as Sarutobi takes his place in battle, and Minato makes a decision that will change not only his life, but the lives of his family. Kushina, I'm going to have to use the dead demon seal on Naruto and Naomi. I'll seal the yin chakra in Naomi because she's a girl and we can train her early so that she can control the fox's chakra like you did, while I'll seal the fox's yang chakra into Naruto, and we don't need to train him because the yang is less tameable than the yin, but I'm sure that if Naruto inherited your never give up, he will outwill the hatred of the yang and control the yang part. What are you talking about? These are my children, Minato. I won't let you turn them into a Jinchuruki so that in the end, they can receive the abuse of the villagers. I won't let you, shouted a very rebellious Kushina while she snatched her children from Tsunade. How they can sleep peaceful through all this noise is beyond me, was the thought of one very shocked Tsunade after she heard the plan. Also listening to the plan was one Sarutobi Hiruzen, who left Jiraiya to fight the fox, made a slight alteration to that plan when he said, Minato, you're still young, in charge, and you just had children while I'm getting old and past my prime. The village will need someone as strong and independent as you, not a withering deceitful old fool. I'll do the sealing while you and Kushina remain with the children and have the village see them as heroes. Now I must go join my wife in the afterlife, said Sarutobi, but Kushina still insists. No, you will not turn them into Jinchuruki while I'm still conscious. I won't let you. Kushina, he has to be able to protect the village, and it's one's duty as Hokage to protect his village, the same village that I want my kids to grow in with their parents watching over them, replies Minato. Then he stops as he notices Kushina calm down. All right, Minato, but I still don't like it. If anything goes bad, I blame you, says Kushina as exhaustion takes over her. Minato grimly takes both children in his arms and appears next to Hiruzen, who teleports both of them to the battlefield where their shinobi are fighting against the fox. Jiraiya, while fighting, notices them and asks, Sensei, Minato, what's going on? What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be with Kushina? Then he notices the children in Minato's hands and comes to a conclusion on what's happening. Then he looks at Minato with a serious face, who nods, then asks, who's gonna do it? The third Hokage. At first it was me that was going to do it, but then I realized I have a family to look after and Sarutobi offered his help. Minato replied solemnly, and Jiraiya looks over to his sensei to ask for his opinion, which he got by a nod of the head and his sensei's words. Jiraiya, please distract the fox while I summon the Shinigami over to this realm, as Minato prepares his children for this sacrifice. Hi sensei. As that was said, Hiruzen went through hand signs for that jutsu, and as he was done, the Shinigami appeared, and with its intimidating figure he spoke. What is your reason for summoning me, Ninjin? I have paperwork to finish and souls to torture. Shinigami-sama, I am Sarutobi Hiruzen of the Leaf Village, and I ask for your help in sealing the fox's yin chakra into the girl and its yang chakra into the boy, thus making them respective Jinchuruki of the Leaf Village, spoke a very intimidated Hiruzen, and as he said this, the Shinigami formerly known as King Yama, looks at Naruto, notices he looks very familiar. What's this? He looks just like Goku and his tail further confirms my claim. And what's that? A dormant yet strong when unleashed Saiyan blood. I'll help him there. With that thought, his eyes glowed behind his mask and he made Naruto's Saiyan blood dominant among the Uzumaki and Namikaze blood so he will be a full Saiyan with his parents' DNA in his genetic reading. There, that should do it. Now when the time comes, I'll allow Goku permission to stay in the boy's mind to train him till the age of 15. Now onto the main reason I was summoned. You know the cost of one summoning me for the task, are you ready to make payment with the intended price? Asked the Shinigami as he drew his knife from his mouth. Yes I do, and I am willing to give my life for the exchange, replied Hiruzen. Then it shall be done, he said as he cornered the fox and separated the yin and yang chakra, sealed tea in their hosts respectively, and after that was done, he took Hiruzen's life. Cough cough Minato, I know you will make a good cage for the village, cough wheeze do anything you must cough to protect it as a proud cage would, and with that, his life ended. Of course, Sandame I would do as you ask, as respect to your dying wish and protect the village with the best of my ability, said Minato with his children back in his hands. Then he looked over at Naomi and said, I'll do everything I can to make the people of this village happy and I'll start training Naomi to be strong enough to handle the fox's chakra at the age of 3 and make sure she's strong enough to protect herself and the world because I know for sure that she is the prophesized child, and he remembered how he knew about the prophecy. Flashback no jutsu. Minato, the toads told me a prophecy some time ago about a warrior of pure heart and fueled by rage shall be born of 2 powerful ninja, and shall bring peace to the world or utterly destroy it, and from what I've noticed it could be one of the children that Kushina is about to give birth to, Jiraiya says. Minato asks, if you're sure, then which one, Naruto or Naomi? I should be sure so that I can start their training early. Jiraiya replies, I think Naomi would be the child of the prophecy because she will have both yours and Kushina's chakra in her and the Kyuubi no Yoko's yin sealed in her as well. That makes perfect sense, but I won't let Kushina know about it, Minato replies. It would be our little secret, says Jiraiya with a bug grin, as Minato grins as well. Kai. And with that thought, he left to Kushina reporting the news wondering what happened to the masked man and why he attacked Konoha in the first place. 5 years later, it is the 5th anniversary of the Kyuubi's attack and defeat at the hands of the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. There is a festival to commence this great event that is usually held the night of the date, and everyone is extremely happy on this day, well almost everyone. The soul that was unhappy on this day was none other than Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, firstborn of the 4th Hokage and the Red Death. He has midnight black, spiky hair and a monkey tail swirling behind him. As to why he is unhappy at this moment, Naruto is currently alone in his room, while his parents are training his sister to be a ninja. It all started 2 years ago. Flashback no jutsu. Just as Minato said, he along with Kushina started training Naomi in the family ninja arts at 3 years old. Naruto was ecstatic. He, along with his sister, would finally start to learn about cool ninja tricks from their parents. Hi 2-chan, I'm ready to start learning how to be a ninja, shouted a hyperactive black-haired boy. Sorry, Naruto, but your mother and I need to train your sister because of a very important circumstance. But 2-chan, I wanna learn how to be a cool ninja like you and Ka-chan. Naruto begins to beg desperately, please, I'll do any and everything you ask, and I wanna ma. Naruto, listen to your father, if he says we need to train your sister first, then you will obey that wish. Yes, Ka-chan, replied the depressed black-haired boy. With that, Naruto decided to go to his room in the hopes that maybe his parents will reconsider over the next day or so. Unfortunately for Naruto, his parents had given him the same answer they had given him the first time he asked about training a few days later. Naruto, then, decided to train in secret so he wouldn't fall behind his sister. He was currently working on his taijutsu when someone made their presence known to the Saiyan. Hello, Naruto-sama, what are you doing out here all alone? I would have thought that you would be with our family. Naruto then got a depressed aura around him. Oh, hi Itachi, 2-chan and Ka-chan are busy training Naomi Ne-chan, Naruto replies to the now revealed Itachi. Really? Without you, replied a surprised Itachi. Naruto suddenly picked himself up. loudly proclaiming, "It's all right, and I'm still going to train so I don't fall behind Naomi-ne-chan. Hey, Naruto, if you're interested I could help you train when I'm available." Itachi didn't even get to complete his sentence when Naruto interrupted him. Really? At Itachi's nod Naruto started to bounce all over the place in happiness. From that point on, Itachi trained with Naruto whenever he could. Naruto had changed a lot since then. He practically stopped asking his parents for training, seeing as they told him no every single time. It was tough for Naruto since he couldn't rely on his parents for help, especially when Naruto got interested in sealing not long after he started his training with Itachi. He had to borrow the books from his father's study in order to learn the basics. He was proud to say that after 2 years of study on sealing, Naruto was low chunin. He had high genin chakra reserves for his age, but it didn't really compare to his sister's low jonin reserves. Naomi would be a chakra powerhouse when she was older, especially with the training she was receiving from both their parents. That thought had brought a frown to the boy's face. He wanted to know why his parents were training his sister and only his sister, which he thought was completely unfair. Naruto thought about this many times on his way home. Home. Was it really a home where your parents practically have nothing to do with you and spend all their time on a sibling? As he walked through door it was absolutely silent. His parents and sister were probably out in the family training grounds or out somewhere in the village having their family bonding time. Having completed his daily personal training he decided to go to bed early. He would have never suspected that what was going to happen tonight was going to change not only his life, but also the entire elemental nations. Later that night, in Naruto's mindscape, Naruto woke up in a dark, wet sewer. Where the hell am I? Naruto thought. Naruto saw some huge structure off in the distance, and as he got closer to it the more apparent it became to him that it was a cage. Naruto heard a malevolent chuckle coming from within the cage, and at the same time giant, red-slitted eyes opened up and looked directly at him. Ha ha ha, so, my container finally decides to come pay me a visit. A malevolent voice spoke as Naruto listened to the voice. He could just barely make out a giant animal-like figure with 9 tails. He had no more time to look when a huge furry hand slammed down where he had been only a few seconds before. Insolent little monkey. You should have let me, the great Kyuubi, end you right there. At least I would have been able to escape your body and rip the other half of my chakra that your father sealed in your accursed sister. Naruto went wide-eyed hearing this. Was this why he had heard some of the villagers talking about demons and foxes when he was in the area? Because he had the Kyuubi sealed in him. If so, why did his parents never tell him? Did his sister know? Naruto wasn't able to think any more on the matter because he felt a cold death-like presence around him. That is quite enough of you, Kyuubi. Shinigami, the death god, faded into appearance. I believe I have a few things to discuss with the boy, so go back to sleep. With that the Kyuubi suddenly went to sleep within his cage. Shinigami-sama, I truly do hope that you're not here to take my soul or anything like that. The Shinigami just chuckles, although it sounds very eerie. No, Naruto, I don't plan to take your soul, yet. I actually wanted to speak to you about learning what you are, and how to use your unique abilities. I'm interested, but what's the catch? I doubt you would do this out of the goodness of your heart, replied Naruto. Haha, you're very sharp Naruto. It's a shame that your parents have been so stuck on your sibling to notice your impressive potential, but you're right. I'm not doing this for nothing. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the mention of his parents' favoritism with his sister. I want you to use your gifts, should you accept my offer, to hunt down a few people for me. These people have each found their own versions of extending their own lives, which is something that goes against my design. Everything in life has an end and I do not like people playing with what that. Shinigami-sama, I humbly accept your most gracious offer, replied Naruto. Excellent Naruto, I look forward to what you will be capable of in the future, and now for my end of the bargain. The Shinigami snapped his fingers, and then there was an extremely bright light. As the light subsided, a man, around 5 feet 9 inches, with spiky, black hair like Naruto's started to appear. This man's name is Goku and he is your ancestor, but if you could call him anything it would be grandfather. Anyway, he is like you, and will tell you what you are, what you're capable of, and train you till the age of 15. spoke the Shinigami, while pointing to the man that was now with them, who was listening intensely to the conversation. While the Shinigami was speaking to Naruto, Goku was looking intensely at his descendant, sizing him up. Goku finally spoke to Naruto, "Hi, how ya doing?" Naruto's sweat dropped at this. "Anyway, I guess I'm gonna be your trainer till 15 like the Shinigami said." Goku continued to speak after gaining a small nod from his would-be protege. "So, did you have any particular training regimen that you are currently doing?" Naruto answered his question, "Yeah, I have been basically working on my taijutsu, but haven't found a suitable style, besides my parents' style, my ceiling, which I'm around low chunin, and I have good chakra control for my reserves." He added, "I've basically tried to keep any high-level training that could alert the village and my family of any training that I'm doing." Goku had put in his thoughts when Naruto had told him all about his current skills. "Well, you have no concept of ki, so I guess we'll start there, then we'll start on simple ki manipulation that include flying and ki sensing. I'll also teach you image training to help with you learning high-level techniques without alerting the village. We'll also continue on your taijutsu training as well as stealth. Heck, if you can impress me, I'll even teach you my instant transmission technique." This last technique had piqued Naruto's interest far more than the flying technique. "Instant transmission?" Naruto asked. "Yeah, it allows me to teleport to anything within my range to sense energy," Goku replied. "Cool," was Naruto's only reply, while Goku chuckles. "Okay, so now the boring part. You need to know about your race, so you'll learn about the Saiyans within your mind tonight, and tomorrow ask your Hokage if you can use a training ground," Goku tells Naruto. Hearing this, he nods. And so the long history lesson began. The next day, Naruto was walking into his father's office in order to use for his training. He was inwardly praying that his father's neglect would be deep enough to where he would sign the document, letting Naruto go to a training ground of his choice. When Naruto gave the document to his father, Minato didn't really want to hear anything that Naruto would say, so he signed it without a second thought just to get his son out of his hair. As Naruto left the Hokage's office, he couldn't believe that the entire moment just happened. He put that thought out of his mind, so he could concentrate on getting to his Goku's chosen training ground. The Forest of Death. Yes, the perfect place to hone Naruto's taijutsu, stealth, energy sensing. 7 years later, a figure emerged from the Forest of Death, and the figure was around 4 feet 9 inches and dressed in a worn-out training gi with gauntlet gravity weights on his arms and gravity shin weights on his legs. The figure was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and he was now 12 years old. Naruto had grown much in his years of training in the Forest of Death. His chakra levels were around low Jonin with high Chunin control, unlike his ki that is enormous. Goku even commented that his ki level was as high as himself when he fought Buu. His ceiling capabilities rivaled both his mother's and father's capabilities. He had learned all of the moves that Goku had to offer him. Naruto was taught Goku's Turtle Hermit Fist, and excelled in it. However, Naruto's greatest achievement to date was learning and perfecting instant transmission to the point where Naruto could perform the technique effortlessly, and without the use of his index and middle fingers. In the village, Naruto is now walking through the village, then out of the corner of his eye he sees a familiar stand with the 3 of 4 people Naruto trusts most. Kyuki, the owner, chef of Ichiraku Ramen, Iyame, one of the 2 chefs in Ichiraku and daughter of Kyuki, Makoto Uchiha, the matriarch of the Uchiha clan. As his eyes hover over the sight of Kyuki and his daughter, Naruto remembers how he met the father-daughter duo. Flashback no Jutsu. 6 years ago, Naruto was walking through the village, desperate to find something to eat. He had just finished training for today, and he was starving. Unfortunately, most of the restaurants won't service him because he's the demon. That's when Naruto hears a girl-like scream, and all thoughts of food were gone for the moment. He immediately began to extend his senses as to find the origin of the scream. Naruto was able to pinpoint to screams, and find them. As he got closer to the noise, distant words such as, "help," "no," and "get away," were starting to make their way to Naruto's ear. He quickly veered down an alleyway, but what he would see next would make his blood boil. There were 5 young men, around the age of 16, surrounding a young woman, who was backed against the wall and in a less than appropriate state of dress. 3 of the men had on flak jackets, so he assumed they were chunin while the other 2 were civilians. Anger seeping into his voice, he called out, "Hey you, don't you know that rape is illegal?" Annoyance and surprise ran through the group of men, while hope within the woman. As they turned towards the person who made the statement, laughter could be heard and you could practically feel the hope in the woman dwindling. "Demon Fox, why don't you go run along like a good little pet before we decide to have fun with you too," said one of the men. The temperature suddenly dropped significantly, and all the while Naruto said nothing. With his hair covering his eyes he whirled out of existence. A second later, one of the civilians was on the ground unconscious with a broken, bloody nose. The 3 chunin, remaining civilian, and captor were shocked at the speed the boy moved at. The boy quickly assumed a stance and whirled out of sight again, this time taking out the last civilian and a chunin. The last chunin, seeing this, quickly grabbed the woman by her hair, took out a kunai and held it to the girl's throat. "Stay back or I'll kill her," he said in a frightened tone. "Whoa, okay, I'm backing off," as Naruto placed his hands in front of him in a complacent manner, while keeping his senses extended. Naruto then slowly backed away, all the while taking his left hand and placing his index and middle fingers on his forehead. The former scared chunin then turned arrogant. "Ha, I knew you didn't have it in you, demon. You wouldn't risk this little whore's life," he continued to drabble while lowering his kunai, thinking he was safe. In that instant, Naruto disappeared and the chunin thought, where the hell did he go? Before his entire world went black. The woman that was about to be killed was amazed. She had never seen a person move that fast. 1 second he was backing away, then the next he knocked the ninja restraining her out with a hit to the back of the head. She quickly scrambled away from her would-be raper. It was then that she noticed the features of her savior. Worn-out clothes showing his athletic build with muscles starting to develop quite nicely, black spiky hair, a rather handsome face that had little baby fat on it, an extremely cute brown monkey tail swaying wildly behind him, and even cuter whisker marks on his cheeks. She blushed at what the kid would look like in a few years. His voice had brought her out of her musings. "Hey, are you alright? What's your name?" he asked in a gentle, kind voice. Ayame, and yes, I'm fine thanks to YYU, she said with a stutter as she tries to cover her halform with her hands. "Good, so where do you live?" asked Naruto, trying to find out more about this young woman. "My father owns the Ichiraku ramen stand in the village," replied Ayame. "Oh, okay, just give me a second to get you something more appropriate than the rags you got on his clothes," he said while showing her a spiral tattoo on his arm. He then said, "Seal release." With a puff of smoke, Naruto now was holding a drawstring bag. He opened the bag to fish out a scroll that had the kanji for clothes on it. With another, "Seal release," and another puff of smoke, Naruto now held a new, exact replica of his worn-out training gi. He then handed the clothing to her and said, "I'll be right around the corner, while you get changed, okay?" She just nods, and 10 minutes later she calls Naruto over. Naruto notices the training gi is a little tight on Ayame, but that can't be helped right now. Naruto speaks to Ayame, "Okay, do you want me to take you through the village to your father's restaurant or do you want me to get you there without going through the village?" "I'd rather not be around a lot of people right now," she replied as Naruto nods his head in understanding. "Relax," Naruto says as he wraps his arm around Ayame's waist, and places his free hand's index and middle fingers to his forehead. Both of them vanish in an instant. After appearing at the ramen stand, Ayame called of her father and explained what had happened, and Kyuki was extremely relieved and grateful to the boy. So, as thanks for the boy deeds, Kyuki let the boy have whatever he wanted on the house. Naruto's eyes next start to roam to the figure of Makoto, as he remembers how he met her for the first time. Flashback no jutsu. I'm going to go into more detail about the Kushina-Naruto confrontation in the next chapter. It had been a few days since Ayame was nearly raped, and Naruto was walking around the village. He decided to get some ramen before going off into the forest to train for the day. He was just about to sit down and order his meal when he heard someone angrily call his name. Kushina was extremely mad and on the warpath. She had just found out that Naruto was causing trouble again. When she saw him again, she was going to tear him a new one. She spots him near the ramen stand. "Naruto!" she shouts with fury in her voice. Third point of view. Makoto was walking through the village in order to get her something to eat besides what the Uchiha clan serves regularly. She had decided on ramen, and wouldn't you know it, Naruto, the son of Kushina, sitting down to eat ramen as well. She thought she could talk to him and see how he and the rest of the family were doing. She had gotten 3/4 the way to the ramen stand when she heard an angry Naruto being projected towards him. Then, there was her best friend, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, and she looked mad as hell. Kushina had started to heatedly argue with Naruto, while Naruto was just trying to calm her down. Makoto heard Kushina saying, "Why can't he be more like his sister?" And when he tried to explain to Kushina what happened, she just snapped. Kushina grabbed a handful of his shirt and slapped him hard. "Speak only when spoken to, you delinquent." Makoto heard Kushina scream. Makoto's eyes were exactly like Naruto's, wide-eyed and full of shock. After a few seconds, Naruto broke free from her grip and left with a speed Kushina didn't know he had. Makoto suddenly wasn't feeling very hungry, so she decided to try to find Naruto. After an hour, Makoto finally found him. He was standing in front of the Forest of Death, so she began to carefully walk towards him. As Naruto was standing at the entrance of Training Ground 44, he was lost in his own world till he was broken out of it by a rustle of grass. He looked behind him and saw a beautiful woman, dark hair and eyes, nice figure. "Who are you? What do you want?" he said in a monotone voice, staring at her with no emotion. Makoto replies, "I'm Makoto Uchiha, and I'm the best friend of your mother." She ends with a whispered tone on the last word, knowing the trouble he was having with Kushina right now. Naruto just nods his head down at the mere mention of his mother. Not wanting to talk about this anymore, he starts to turn away to go into the forest. Suddenly, Naruto feels something press against the back of his head. He looked around and saw Makoto embracing him in a loving hug. "Naruto, you can't just keep it locked up. You have to let it out," says a sad Makoto. He tries to fight the hug without hurting her, but he realizes it's futile. The woman just wouldn't let go. He starts to feel liquid dripping onto him, and he turns his head around to see Makoto crying. Upon seeing this, he couldn't hold back his emotions any longer. A sob racks his body as he begins to cry. He cries over what has happened to him, the assaults, the neglect, everything. As Makoto stands there holding Naruto's sobbing form, she thinks, "Kushina, you stupid fool. What have you done to your son?" Kai. Today is Naruto and Naomi's birthday, and Naruto isn't expecting anything to be different. Oh, how wrong he is. A few hours later, when the party begins, everyone was in the Namikaze living room in anticipation for Naomi's gifts, but only 3 people had brought gifts for the Hokage's firstborn, Naruto. All of the adults have already had a few drinks, so they're walking a little funny at the moment. "Okay, everybody, it's time for Naomi to start opening her presents." At hearing this, Naomi is ecstatic. As Naomi is tearing through gift after gift, Naruto has opened his 3 gifts and is glad with what he has. From Makoto, he has a black haori that reached his knees like his father's, and it fits him very well. From Ayame, he was given a huge bowl of birthday ramen made just for him, ultra size. By the time Tyuki was ready to give Naruto his gift, Naruto had already inhaled his birthday ramen. Finally, Tyuki had decided to give Naruto a cookbook, call it a hunch, but Tyuki had a feeling Naruto would need it one day. At this point of the party, everyone could see Naomi holding 2 giant scrolls and everyone gasping at what they were. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade had wanted Naomi to sign their respective contracts, but they ended up bickering about which contract Naomi would sign. As everyone had their attention on the 2 full-grown Sannin acting like children, Naomi gave an arrogant, smug smile right at her brother. Minato then spoke, "All right Naomi, it's time for your final gift. After a lot of thought, I and your mother have decided to give you the title of clan heiress." Makoto looked shocked and was inwardly seething, "They can't." Everyone else looked happy, minus Ichiraku, who looked shocked, for the girl. Naruto doesn't have any readable emotions on his face. She couldn't believe both Minato and Kushina are doing this. As part of a clan herself, she knows that this can only be done if the current heir dies or is expelled from the clan. And if the look on Naruto's face says anything, then he knows what this gift to Naomi means too. "Minato, Kushina, can I speak to you really quick?" They both nod and head into the kitchen. "So, What do you want to talk about, Makoto? Minato asks. Makoto couldn't contain herself. Are you guys out of your mind? Do you realize what you are doing to Naruto? They replied, yeah, Naruto hasn't shown any abilities that would make a good clan head, unlike Naomi, so we decided to give her the title of heiress. Suddenly all three hears a crash, and ran back into the living room to see what was going on. Flashback no jutsu. A few moments ago, Naomi got up from her position in the living room, and went to hug her brother. She wraps him in a hug. Did you hear that? She begins to whisper arrogantly, Mom and Dad are giving me the title of clan heiress, and then they are throwing you out like the piece of trash you are. Naruto could no longer keep himself calm. He punched her in the gut with one hand, breaking a few of her ribs and forcing her to cough up blood, and then punched her square on the jaw, with the sound of bone cracking filling the surrounding area, knocking her back into a lamp stand, making a loud crash as it hit the floor along with Naomi. Kai, Minato, Kushina, and Makoto ran through the door to only see an enraged Naruto scowling down at his sister, who was bleeding from the mouth and holding her midsection and jaw, gasping. Naruto, what do you think you are doing? Yells Minato, who is shocked at the scene before him. Shut up. You have no right to yell at me after what you two have done. Roared Naruto, finally having enough of how his family treats him. I've taken a lot of shit from this village, along with your neglect and your ridicule. He started shaking uncontrollably, but now, you two crossed the line by giving that arrogant thing my birthright. He started to scream at both Minato and Kushina. Minato started to speak. Naruto, your sister showed Mo. I thought I told you to shut up. Naruto roared at Minato again. She only showed more promise than me because you actually trained her and didn't throw her off to the side like me. Naruto, screaming louder as he continued. With that, Naruto runs upstairs to his room, slamming the door closed upon entering, and preparing to leave this hellhole. He grabs his drawstring bag that has all his worldly possessions, sealing scrolls that contain extra clothes, his gauntlet, shin gravity weights, and his sealing ideas. Naruto then slips out of the window of his room, and begins to levitate in the air. He was about to leave Konoha, but he felt a disturbance. He decided to investigate, and was rewarded with a nearly dead Uchiha clan member. What happened to you? Asked Naruto. Itachi, traitor, kill, clan, the clan member choked out before passing on into the void. So, Itachi went and killed his clan, huh? Thought Naruto, sad that one of the people he trusts had snapped. Naruto then notices the Sharingan still active in the dead Uchiha's head. He decides to take them, thinking, he won't need them and I could use a trump card. He then quickly creates a stasis storage scroll in order to store the eyes till he can implant them into his own eyes. With his work done, Naruto then jumps into the air and begins to fly, at full power, out of the village, not to be heard of by the village for 2 years. Chapter 2, Training, Waven Level 2. 2 weeks after Naruto's departure from the Leaf, we find Naruto traveling to a place unknown to him at the moment by foot as to not attract any unwanted attention, having a mental discussion with his sensei, Goku. Naruto, I think it is about time for you to begin your training to become a Super Saiyan. Goku spoke within Naruto's mind. As Naruto hears this, he gets a shocked and surprised look on his face. He had listened intensely to the stories that Goku had told him concerning the Super Saiyan transformations and much more. Really? You think that I am ready to start that type of training? Naruto thought back, doubting his own abilities and worth. Yes, Naruto. You are more than ready because your ki level is higher than mine when I became a Super Saiyan. Goku tries to assure his protege. You soak up information like a sponge and train harder than me, so I have no doubt you will do fine. Naruto beamed at his sensei's words. Thanks, Sensei. Naruto then got a questioning look in his face. Sensei, if the Super Saiyan transformation is as flashy as you describe, then how will I be initiated without attracting a whole lot of people to my location? Ah, there is the beauty of it. Goku spoke with a triumphant grin on his face. I am going to direct you to Kami's lookout tower where the time chamber resides. The time chamber. The time chamber. Naruto's eyes widen as he hears his sensei speak. Yes, the time chamber. The perfect place for you to train, so you to go as wild as you want. Goku replies, while chuckling at his surprised student. Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's get to training. Mentally shouts in excitement to his sensei. Alright, just let me pinpoint the lookout's location. he begins to focus on where the lookout is currently at. Found it, 23 miles to your left, then go up, Goku says. Naruto then begins to levitate in the air, and then takes off towards his left at full power, eager to start training. It was not long till his sensei mentally spoke, up. Naruto then proceeded to fly straight up into the atmosphere. Naruto begins to see a small dot above him that is increasing rapidly in size as he approaches it. Here we are, Kami's lookout and the time chamber. Goku speaks as the memories of his time here start to flow back to him. Naruto starts to descend towards the front steps of the lookout, his eyes full of wonder at the place. As he lands, Naruto notices a short, chubby-looking man. There is Mr. Popo, Goku says casually. That's Mr. Popo. Naruto thought, his eyes nearly pop out of his head learning this. I was not expecting him to look like this. Hello, young man. Who are you? What are you doing here? Mr. Popo asks in a polite manner. Hello to you, Mr. Popo. My name is Naruto. Mr. Popo facial expression turns from clam to shock as the young man knows his name. I heard about this place through many interesting stories, and I was wondering if it would be possible for me to train here. Naruto, how is it that you know my name? Asked Mr. Popo, curious to how Naruto knows his name. Ah, yes. My sensei told me of you in his many stories of the world during his time, as Naruto remembers the stories he was told. Who is your sensei, young Naruto? Mr. Popo asks. Son Goku, Naruto proclaims proudly. Ah, Goku ha, a very nice man. Mr. Popo replies. He never would stop training for a minute. Yeah, I am kinda the same way. Replied Naruto, agreeing with what Mr. Popo said about his mentor. So, you wanted to come here for training in the time chamber, right? Mr. Popo asks. Naruto nods his head. Alright, you can use it, but you will need to know a few things about the chamber first before you go in. At hearing this, Naruto stiffens ever so slightly, gaining a serious look on his face. First, when you enter the time chamber, you will be able to get an extremely high amount of training done within a short period of time. Naruto nods his head at this, already knowing about it from Goku. Second, you will only be able to stay in the chamber for a maximum of 2 days. This is the longest amount of time the body can withstand being in the chamber, Mr. Popo said with great seriousness in his voice, wanting to get the point across. What would happen if you stayed over the allotted time? Asks Naruto, genuinely curious about the after effects. If you stay in the chamber for longer than 2 days, then you will never be able to leave, Mr. Popo said in a grave tone. Alright, let's get to training. Naruto says enthusiastically. Mr. Popo shakes his head with a small smile on his face. He certainly is his master's student. As Naruto stands at the entrance to the time chamber, Mr. Popo says one last thing. Naruto, there is 2 years worth of food to sustain you in the chamber. Train hard and good luck. Naruto nods his head in thanks as he walks through the entrance, and hears the door close. Inside the time chamber. As Naruto is walking around the room, Goku decides to start his tort. Training. Naruto, what I want you to do first is to take out your gravity weights and put them on, but do not activate them yet. You will have plenty of time for that, as Naruto takes out his drawstring bag via his storage seal located on his shoulder. Naruto finds the scroll containing his weights, and with a quick, seal release. And a puff of smoke, Naruto then straps on his weights. Alright, now get out onto the training or so we can begin, but don't wander off more than a few feet. As Naruto begins to walk on the gigantic white training ground, the gravity here can fluctuate quite rapidly, but right now it is 10 times the gravity you have been training at. As soon as Naruto gets a few feet away from the resting room, he feels the level of gravity hit him. Damn, this makes things a little more difficult. Naruto says mentally, as he physically struggles to move to this new gravity. Yeah, but you are doing a little better than my son, Gohan, did when he first came here, Goku replies, clearly impressed by what he is seeing. Naruto beams hearing this. What I want to do is get you used to the gravity, and then we can start your Super Saiyan training. Naruto uses this as motivation to get to the real training quicker, and starts to do vigorous physical activities in order to get used to the gravity. 1 hour later, Goku was completely amazed at what was happening. Naruto had gotten the 10 times gravity down in a single hour, while he had gotten it down in nearly 2. Looks like Naruto is ready to begin his ascension. but he is going to have to relive everything that he has been through, thought a cumbersome Goku, at having to put his protege through this. He finally voiced his instruction out loud. Naruto, you have adjusted to the gravity well enough. Now comes the hard part of the training. Naruto hears this, and realizes that, from Goku's stories, he needs to be in a heightened state of rage in order to reach Super Saiyan. Naruto, I want you to raise your power level as high as you can go, and then think back about all of the things that you have been through. Yes sensei, Naruto says as he begins to increase his power level. Anha, the time dimension starts to shake from the power that Naruto is releasing. After 15 minutes, Naruto's power is now at maximum strength and now he begins to remember everything that got him to this moment. Flashback no jutsu. 6 years ago, several days after Naruto saved Ayame from being raped. Naruto had just sat down to order his ramen when he heard an angry sounding, Naruto. He turned to the sound and saw his mother making a beeline straight towards him. Hika-san, why are you so angry? Naruto asks, wondering what he had done to have her angry at him. You know what you have done. You attacked 3 Chunin and 2 civilians without provocation. Arg. Why can't you be like your sister? Kushina shrieked so loud that people were staring to notice the scene. Why would I want to be like her? She is an arrogant, selfish, and manipulative bitch, Naruto thinks then says, Ka-san, I think that you have been greatly misinformed. Slap. He felt a small amount of pain on his cheek, he could not believe it. His mother had just slapped him, she is not even letting me get my side of the story in, he then heard her yell. Speak only when spoken to, you delinquent. He broke free from the grip that she had on him to slap him, and then he took off as fast as he could, not wanting to be in her presence any longer. 3 months after Naruto's 3rd birthday. Naruto was running as fast as his tired body would allow him. He had just gotten done with his personal training for the day. Why was he running? Behind him was a huge, angry mob of both civilians and shinobi. Die demon. It is time for us to finish what our beloved Yondaime started and free his son from your demonic control. Demon, they shouted, catching up to him with every second. Why are they doing this to me? What have I ever done to them? Where is Tu-chan and Ka-chan? Why aren't they here? He couldn't think anymore because he had felt a kunai sinking into his right calf. Ah! He screamed in pain. Ah! He screamed in pain as he collapsed to the ground. Within an instant, the mob was upon him, beating and torturing him in their crazed rage. They cut him, stabbed him, and kicked him several times. By the time they stopped having fun beating him, they left him there on the street in a growing pool of his own blood, with several broken ribs and a punctured lung. Naruto had long since lost consciousness after being kicked a few times. He didn't know what compassionate soul took pity on him, but he woke up in an alley off of the main road not far from where he'd been left. Looking up, he saw a cloudless inky black sky. He would later come to learn that his parents and sister had been back at the house the entire time, with Naruto not even crossing their minds. After Naomi had gotten the title of heiress. I cannot believe this. They would willingly throw me out of the clan and house. Just to make this arrogant bitch happy. Naruto went on in his mind, they think I did not notice, but when they looked at me for a second, I could see disappointment in their eyes. Why are they disappointed? They haven't taught me a damn thing in 9 years since they started training Naomi. Hell, they haven't even tried to be a mother and father to me. It is always her. Kai. Something snapped within Naruto. He let back his head and let loose an enraged scream, Nuu Eric. Naruto's spiky, black hair shifted upwards turning a golden color, his once cerulean blue eyes turned teal green, and a yellow aura appears around Naruto's form as his power level skyrockets. Naruto, great job on becoming a Super Saiyan, Goku says as Naruto's body begins to shift into a relaxed state. Goku continued, now, what we are going to do is get you used to the transformation so you can become a Super Saiyan at will. You won't need to take as long to transform, and you won't need to use anywhere near as much ki to do it. That way, you can stay in Super Saiyan form for extended periods of time, even indefinitely, when you become strong enough. Alright sensei, but let me try something first, as Naruto took out a blank scroll paper and began writing on it. After a few minutes, he placed the paper on the ground. On the paper was an intricate seal array. Naruto then cut his hand and placed a smear of blood on the seal array, and then made the ram hand sign and said, "Activate." The seal array started to glow blue, and the smear of blood then started to grow and bulge. A few minutes later, a perfect replica of Naruto formed on top of the seal array. "Naruto, what did you just do?" asks Goku. As Naruto listened to his sensei's question, began to think back on how he came across the original new clone technique. Flashback no jutsu. 1 month after Naomi's training began. With both his parents too busy teaching Naomi to bother with him, Naruto decided to discreetly help himself to his parents' scrolls. As Naruto sneaked into his father's office, he started to look in his bookshelf and found a starting book on sealing. Naruto was extremely interested in sealing ever since he had seen his mother and father use it when he was younger, so he decided to borrow the beginner's sealing guide. As he was leaving, something else caught his eye. It was a huge scroll that did not seem to be very important, considering that fact that it had no protection whatsoever. So, Naruto decided to open the scroll and see what was inside. To his amazement, the scroll was filled to the brim with techniques, and so he began to read through the scroll. After 10 minutes of reading, he came across a technique that interested him. The blood clone technique, a variation of the clone technique that is formed by ram hand sign, while adding chakra to the blood of the user. This clone technique is the sturdiest out of all clones because you actually have to kill them like you would kill a human being in order to end the technique, besides the user dispelling the technique. This clone technique also has the properties of the shadow clone technique, which transfers memories of whatever the clone learns to the original and half the chakra of the user. This technique requires half a pint of blood and a quarter of Jonin chakra reserves in order to work. Naruto then snuck out of the office and went to his room to begin seals training. Kai. Well, I just took the original technique, the blood clone, and combined it with a seal array that will multiply the cells from the blood I supply to the amount needed to form the clone, while I send the chakra. Said Naruto, speaking in a serious tone. How many can you make, and how long do they last? Goku asked, looking extremely curious and happy at the technique Naruto used. I can make at least 2 more with this one, and not exhaust my reserves, replies Naruto, as Goku gets a dark gleam in his eyes. Make the other clones so you can get started on a more advanced training regimen. Ku. Goku chuckles dementedly at the end, while Naruto thinks. Aw shit. And so the 2 years of the training from hell began. Outside the time chamber. 2 days later, Mr. Popo was tending to his garden when he remembered that Naruto was supposed to come out of the time chamber today. I need to get ready so I can greet Naruto when he comes out of the chamber. He begins to set everything up so he could see how well Naruto's training paid off. At the time chamber entrance, the door to the time chamber opens just as Mr. Popo appears in the line of sight. A young man, around the age of 14, walks out, and he has light blonde hair and teal green eyes. This young man is none other than Naruto. Hello, Naruto. I trust your training went well, asked Mr. Popo, curious as to what the young man was able to do after the 2 years' worth of training he did in the time chamber. Yes, the training went very well, and then some, replies Naruto, in a relaxed tone despite being in his Super Saiyan form. I see you have done the exact same thing that Goku did with his Super Saiyan state, said Mr. Popo, stating the obvious. Yeah, it is unbelievable how natural the transformation feels now that I have mastered it, replies Naruto, proving Mr. Popo's statement true. Mr. Popo, there is a secret that I would like to tell you. It is very personal to me, but I believe you have shown yourself to be an understanding and kind person. Mr. Popo smiles at hearing Naruto say such wonderful things about him, and is touched by the amount of trust that the young man is putting in him. You see, Naruto begins as he tells his life story to Mr. Popo. He explains what happened to him and his sister at birth, his life up to his leaving the village, and finally his trip to the lookout. At the end of it all, Popo is just barely trying to not break down right there. It must have been awful to have had to go through that, Naruto, Mr. Popo sniffles out, trying to hold back the tears that are threatening to fall from his eyes. Naruto simply nods his head at the statement his new friend made. When Mr. Popo got himself under control, he asked, I am curious though if you had made any progress in dealing with this, Kyuubi. Actually, yes I have. I fought him and won, which ended with me obtaining the Kyuubi's chakra and a small piece of his respect. He's still pissed about the fact that I took his chakra, but at least I got him to respect me a little bit from fighting him myself, replies Naruto, thinking back to his fight with Kyuubi. Flashback no Jutsu. It had been a year and a half since Naruto began his training in the time chamber, and he was ecstatic. He had mastered the Super Saiyan transformation in the first 6 months of awakening it, and then he began perfecting his ki attacks and taijutsu while in the transformation, which took another 6 months, and, finally for the last 6 months, he had been working on increasing his power level in his Super Saiyan transformation. Naruto was now in his mindscape talking to his sensei. Sensei, since you have a connection with the death god, do you think it would be possible for you to contact him, and asks him to meet me here in my mind? There is something that I would like to discuss with him. A few more minutes of hard concentration from Goku, and Naruto was rewarded with a hard, cold feeling descending around him. A few seconds later the Shinigami appeared. "Ah, Naruto, what is it that you wish to speak to me about? It better be good since I don't like my personal time being wasted by trivial matters," spoke the Shinigami in a serious tone. Naruto nodded, and then spoke. "You did the sealing of the Kyuubi, correct?" The Shinigami nodded his head, wondering where this was going. "Yes, I performed the sealing at the behest of the old man Hokage, Sarutobi, and splitted the 2 halves of the Kyuubi's chakra between you and your sister," said the Shinigami. "Do you have the key to the seal considering you performed the sealing?" asked Naruto. "Yes, I do have the key, but why would you want to know about that?" asked the Shinigami, in an amused tone, already knowing where this conversation will end. "Well, I was hoping you could release the seal so I could fight the Kyuubi," said Naruto, his hand rubbing the back of his head absent-mindedly. "I'll do you one better. I'll give you the key, so you can release the seal yourself and I along with Goku here will watch," spoke the Shinigami, who materializes 2 chairs from nothing for both he and Goku to sit on and watch the fight. As Naruto walked towards the cage, the Kyuubi, who had been listening to the conversation the entire time, spoke, "Little Saiyan monkey, what are you doing?" Contempt oozing out of his voice. "I'm going to release the seal, and fight you," said Naruto in a jovial tone, as he began to unlock the seal. The Kyuubi just growled at what his container said. The Kyuubi took his chance as soon as the last lock on the seal was released. He brought his arm back and slammed it down upon the seal gate, blasting it open and breaking it off its hinges as well as sending Naruto back several feet. "Ha, you insolent monkey! Do you know what you've done?" As the Kyuubi continued his boastful victory. "You have practically given me my freedom, and after I'm done crushing you into dust I'll get started on your sister." Kyuubi then charges up a Bijudama and fires it right at Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto is getting up from being sent back at the beginning of the fight. He then noticed a large ball of highly condensed chakra coming straight at him. Naruto is engulfed in a bright light as the Bijudama explodes. "Ha ha 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 ha. You see that? That little monkey was no match for me." Naruto suddenly appears right in front of an extremely surprised Kyuubi. With great speed, strength, and a yell, "Rag!" Naruto kicks Kyuubi on the side of his nose, sending him flying to right of Kyuubi's former position. Naruto disappears, then reappears above Kyuubi, and then brings both hands down on Kyuubi's body and slams him from the air straight to the ground, making tsunamis erupt away Kyuubi's form from the force of Naruto's attack. Naruto then becomes parallel to the ground with his arms and legs spread wide 50 meters above Kyuubi, charging his energy and preparing for his final assault. Kyuubi noticed Naruto above him and started to channel his chakra for his own attack. Both of them redouble their efforts in anticipation for the other's attack, and Naruto positions his hands in front of him. Bijudama. The Kyuubi let loose his gigantic-tailed beast bomb at Naruto. At the last second, Naruto performed instant transmission and appeared right in front of Kyuubi's face. Final flash. Naruto screamed, releasing his attack on Kyuubi at point-blank range. As the blast hit Kyuubi, it exploded, engulfing both Kyuubi and Naruto in an enormous ball of bright light. As the light died down, a broken, beaten Kyuubi but still breathing was seen in a humongous crater, twice the size any Bijudama could make. Naruto then began to take Kyuubi chakra for his own, while Kyuubi, in his extremely weakened form, could only growl at this act. Naruto prevented Kyuubi from influencing him because of his strong will and memories of the people he truly cares for, so Naruto was able to complete the taking of Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto then resealed Kyuubi with the Shiki Fuin Ki the Shinigami gave him, and then fell to his knees completely exhausted. I won't forget this Naruto, Kyuubi says, completely exhausted from the battle before deciding to sleep to regain its lost energy. Don't worry Kyuubi. I won't treat you badly, just wait a little longer, was his last thought before succumbing to unconsciousness. Meanwhile, with Goku and Shinigami, both overseers had seen both combatants fall into unconsciousness, and both were proud of what Naruto had just accomplished. Goku, your protege doesn't know the word or the meaning of restraint is he? The Shinigami asked Goku. Goku replied, nope, he's never even heard the word, and if you think this is bad, you should have seen him when he was training to master the Super Saiyan transformation. The Shinigami sweat drops upon hearing this. Kai. So, what do you plan on doing now Naruto? Asks his friend, wondering what he is going to do after his training in the time chamber. I am going to travel the elemental nations to see what is out there and possibly do other things, but I don't know what it is yet, replied Naruto, giving his friend an honest answer. Well, have a safe journey, and remember if you need to train in the chamber again don't hesitate to come here, Mr. Popo says before walking off. Thanks, I'll be sure to do that, loudly speaks Naruto so his walking friend can hear him. With that Naruto began walking towards the edge of the lookout only to jump off of it. As he fell, he was suddenly hit by a wave of fear, sadness, and malice thanks to his new sensing capabilities from the Kyuubi's chakra. He quickly flew to where the feelings were originating from. As he got closer he was able to make out a giant group of people that were facing smaller group of people with 3 people in the front. The middle person was on his knees with a thug-like looking man on his left and a suit-wearing midget on his right. Naruto then noticed the thug-like man unsheath a blade and started to bring it down on the middle man's neck. Seeing this, Naruto quickly performed instant transmission. A few moments before in the Wave Village. The villagers of Wave were standing in a tight group on a plateau. Across from them were 3 people. The first man was a thug hired by Gato. The second man, Kaiza, was on his knees looking beaten and exhausted, and finally was Gato, the person who had caused the gathering. Behind him was a group of thugs that he had hired. Now all of you will witness what happens to people who cross me, and let this be a lesson to you on who is in charge of this village. Gato shouts arrogantly, thinking that no one will be able to stop him, kill him now. The thug that was standing next to Kaiza pulled out a sword and swung it down upon Kaiza's head only for a young man to appear out of nowhere next to Kaiza. The blade then went through his neck forcing the image of Kaiza and the young man to shimmer out of existence. Gasp was heard throughout the villagers' side when suddenly said young man and Kaiza appeared in front of them. Not a second later a cry of, Kaiza Koi! And, Daddy! Were heard as a woman and a child ran from the front of the crowd to the downed Kaiza. You're lucky that I sensed you, otherwise you would have died, spoke the young man, who had not taken his eyes of the small group of bandits or the midget. Why don't you and your little group of thugs leave before things get nasty? The bandit that had nearly cut off Kaiza's head honestly thought that he could take the young man, so he charged him. Not a second later, the thug had a fist in the gut, and, for added effect, was blasted into the air by some strange energy blast. Leave now or I will kill you all, the black-haired boy said in a cold tone. Gato and his small army of thug began to back away, while Gato thought, this is not over, not by a long shot. When Gato and his thugs were finally gone, the woman, who was down next to Kaiza, suddenly got up and wrapped the young man in a hug whispering, thank you, over and over again. He gently rubbed her back trying to get her to calm down whispering sweet nothings in her ear, and when she finally calmed down he spoke, hi, my name is Naruto, and not to be nosy but what is going on here? Sorry, my name is Tsunami and you've just saved my husband and Inari's stepfather, Tsunami said, glad that someone had stepped in to save someone she cared about, but, surely you realize that Gato will come back with much more than just thugs next time, right? Then, I'll just have to stay here to protect you guys, replies Naruto. Tsunami starts to tear up again, and repeatedly says, thank you. Over the next few weeks, everything was great for both Naruto and Wave. Naruto had learned that Kaiza and a few others were working together to build a bridge in order to get rid of Gato because of his corruption and what it was doing to Wave. Seeing as he had learned of Wave's current history, Naruto decided to tell the family of his own past. The Wave family couldn't believe what had come out of the young man's mouth when he informed them of his past. They were appalled. How could his own parents' sister do that to him and not seemingly care? Other than that day, everything had been going good for Waves since Naruto's appearance. Unfortunately, that was about to change in the next few days. A few days later, Kaiza and a few other workers were working to finish the creation of a bridge that would help them in the future, under the supervision of Tazuna. Suddenly, a thick mist appeared out of nowhere and a dark oppressive force hit the bridge workers and Kaiza. A giant blade suddenly swung down of Kaiza's shocked form until it was stopped by a single hand. The shadowy figure wielding the giant blade traced the hand to its owner, a blonde-haired boy around 14. Naruto was glad that he had decided to oversee the building of the bridge to make sure nothing went wrong. He then heard the shadowy, blade-wielding figure speak, "Hey, kid, why don't you go back to your mommy, so the adults can deal with business?" Naruto's eyes narrowed dangerously at the "mommy" comment. Naruto replied, "Why don't you tell me what you're doing here, and who you are?" In a tone so cold it left no room for argument. "Fine. I, Zabuza, wielder of the headhunter blade, am here to kill the people you're protecting, so why don't you let me do what I'm being paid for?" A frustrated Zabuza answered. Naruto gained a thoughtful look on his face before answering. "Sorry, no can do. Since you're being paid, I assume Gato is involved." He started in playful tone only to get serious at the question about Gato. He received no answer. "Well, let's see what you can do without that sword of yours." Naruto then, with great strength, ripped the blade out of Zabuza's hands and threw it off to the side. If looks could kill, Naruto would be dead 1,000 times over with the glare Zabuza was giving him. Naruto then assumed the turtle hermit fist stance, and disappeared in a burst of speed. As their fists met, Naruto immediately matched his opponent's strength, but after 5 minutes he became bored. He then began to very slowly increase his strength after every successful hit. Naruto suddenly appeared behind Zabuza, and as Zabuza began an attack on the blonde, acrobatically backflipped into the air, shifting into a roundhouse kick that nailed Zabuza right in his face, sending him back 10 feet. Zabuza was struggling to get up from that last hit. "Grr, what the hell was that? He matched my strength and then it started to increase. Who is he, and how did he get so strong?" An extremely frustrated Zabuza thought. He then noticed the kid had raised his hand, and a bright, blue ball appeared seconds later. "It's over," he hears the kid say in a monotone voice, and he knows he is about to die. In the trees, outside the battle area, a mist hunter nin crouched on a branch watching the battle. As she sees her target, Zabuza, struggling to get up, she decides to act now. Back to Naruto and Zabuza. As Naruto was about to fire his key attack at Zabuza, he suddenly hears whistling, and then he sees Senbon embed them into Zabuza's neck. Zabuza then falls to the ground dead, and a hunter nin appears over his corpse. "Thank you for your help in dealing with my target. I have to leave to dispose of the body now." She and the body then disappears with a Mizu Shushin. Naruto then turns his attention to Kaiza and the other workers, who have their lower jaws on the ground. "What?" he asked in a casual manner, completely playing off the fact that he just saved them all. 1 week later, Naruto had found this really cute girl walking around, so he decided to try to talk to her. He found out her name, which was Haku, and that she also had a troubled past like him. Hearing her talk about her past, Naruto decided to tell Haku about his, and she was extremely shocked by what he said. She had told him what she was doing, grabbing herbs for a sick friend, and he decided to help her out. Over the next few weeks, they grew very close and he decided to take her out on a date. The date went off without a hitch, with both of them enjoying the time they spent together. Naruto is currently watching the bridge building when he suddenly thought of something. Hunter nins are supposed to destroy the body of a missing nin on sight, but this hunter nin didn't, Naruto thought, while remembering some of the reading he had done in Konoha before he left. With that knowledge, Naruto quickly assumed that the hunter nin was working with Zabuza, and that he would attack again as soon as he was healed. A few days later, as expected, Zabuza and that hunter nin had showed up right as the workers were putting the finishing touches on the bridge. "So, I was right about you, hunter nin," Naruto says in a cold voice. "I am doing what I have to, Naruto-san," she replies, while Naruto is thinking, how does she know my name and why does she seem so familiar? Naruto performed the ram hand sign, then slammed his hand down onto the ground. Fuinjutsu. Multiple blood clone technique. He yells as a sealing matrix forms on the ground and two blood clones start to form within the sealing matrix. Naruto then orders the two blood clones to protect the others, while he engages Zabuza. "I'm not playing with you this time, Zabuza," Naruto says coldly as he assumes his stance and disappears. He appears in front of Zabuza and punches him in the gut, which makes blood start to flow from his mouth as the sound of ribs cracking is made clear. As Zabuza is hunched over from the devastating punch to his midsection, Naruto raises his hands together and axe slams them down across Zabuza's back, sending him to the ground, creating a small crater from the impact. He would have finished Zabuza off right there, but some incoming memory from one of his blood clones stopped him. When the Hunter Nin split with Zabuza to take care of the two BC Narutos and the workers. BC Naruto 1 and BC Naruto 2 were guarding the workers as their boss fought Zabuza. The clones noticed Zabuza's associate was heading in their direction, so BC Naruto 1 got in a ready stance. The Hunter Nin just formed one hand sign, and ice mirrors formed around them. "It's over," she said, as she stepped in one of the mirrors. She then blurs out of existence, and heads straight at BC Naruto 1, preparing to end it quickly. Suddenly, she feels pain in her midsection, and she looks down. She gasps as sees BC Naruto 1 in front of her with his elbow buried in her gut. BC Naruto 1, while his elbow is buried in her gut, moves his hand to vertically backhand the Hunter Nin, nailing her in the face. She is sent back a few feet, and her mask shattering could be heard. As she was slowly getting up, BC Naruto 1 got a good look at her face. He gasped, and quickly dispelled, informing the original of what just transpired. Back with Naruto and Zabuza. Receiving the memory transfer, Naruto quickly turns around to face the now revealed Hunter Nin. He begins to walk towards her. Haku CC-chan, he stutters, not believing that this is happening. "Naruto-kun, I'm sorry you had to find out this way," she said in a sad tone, wishing this didn't happen. "Why?" he asks, wanting to know why this happened. "Because, like I said before, I did what I had to do. Zabuza-sama was the one that saved me, gave me a purpose," she said as tears fell from her eyes. Naruto just stares at her in sorrow. Haku's eyes widen suddenly, then she says quickly, "Sorry, Naruto-kun, but this is the last time." She then vanishes, and a second later Naruto heard a squelch. He turns around and his eyes widen in shock and fear at the sight before him. A man standing over Zabuza, in front of Haku, who had a sword through her chest. The man then pushed Haku off his sword, and tuned to a shaking Naruto, "Hey, thanks kid for dealing with Zabuza, all that was left was to deal with his little bitch follower." The man says uncaringly, "I knew the bitch would sacrifice her life just to save him, but you can't save what already dead." Suddenly, Naruto hears a voice speak. He, so the baby demon is dead, shame about his little bitch though, my men could have used her for some fun," the now revealed Gato said arrogantly, having a group of thugs at his back. As he talked, he strolled down to where the bodies of Zabuza and Haku are. He then kicks Haku's face, knocking her head to the other side. With that act, Naruto releases his anger and snaps. "Nanurag." Naruto screams in rage, as he rears his head back, his aura flaring to life with electricity starting to arc around his form. RRAU, his hair started to shift upwards even more and was sporting a single bang down the front of his face, RRAHA. As a bright light surrounds Naruto. As the light dies down, Naruto becomes visible with a violent aura around him, electricity arcing wildly. The ground around him is devastated with huge chunks of earth missing, no doubt from the power that he released going into Super Saiyan 2. His face is stone cold, which is scaring the living hell out of everyone else there, Gato included. Naruto assumed a stance, with his left arm positioned in front with his palm facing out, and his right arm positioned behind him with a golden ball of ki in his hand. Think Goku's stance when he fought Cell, except with a golden ball of ki in his right hand. Then Naruto disappeared and reappeared to the side of the man who killed Haku. Naruto pivoted his hips, and swung his left arm sending the man upwards into the air, and then Naruto appeared above the man then slammed his right ki-filled hand into the man's gut. Naruto fired his ki blasts, with the man still on his ki ball, towards the small army of thugs. As the ball descends it grows bigger, engulfing the thugs, eradicating them along with the surrounding area. Naruto vanishes from his present location, and appears behind the last man left, Gato. Gato was scared out of his wits seeing this young man completely decimate his forces as he speaks in a frightened, desperate tone. WW wait, WW whatever you want ICC can G give it to you. M money, P power, W women. W whatever you want. As he looked at Gato's terrified face, Naruto said, I want you dead, emotionlessly. Naruto then snaps his neck easily. He then hears cheering, he looks around and sees the entire village near the crater he caused, and looking happy that Gato is finally gone. At the front was Inari, who had gathered the villagers together after a blood clone. Naruto left at the house just in case, saved him and his mom from being kidnapped by thugs. It was at this point that Goku screamed in his mind, Naruto, check where Haku is. She's still alive. Naruto's eyes widened at this, and he made his way to where Haku and Zabuza are. Help! Someone get a doctor now! Naruto screams, desperate to not lose the girl he had grown to care for in the past month. He then channeled his ki into her as a desperation attempt to keep her alive till help arrived. 5 hours later, Naruto had been by Haku's side for the past 5 hours, and he had no intentions of leaving. Hell, the doctors didn't want him to leave, since his energy was the only thing keeping the girl alive. He was ecstatic and relived when Haku's eyes began to flutter open, and he grabbed her hand and held it gently. Haku-chan, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? He asks gently, worried for her health. Naruto-kun. Suddenly she tries to sit up, but Naruto gently stops her. Naruto-kun, where's Zabuza-sama? Is he? Everything is okay. Zabuza is beaten up, but he'll live and so will you. He ended in a tone full of care and relief. Haku, I'm going to have to leave soon, but don't worry, I'll be back for you, he says as he notices her expression of fear. Haku then tries her luck and brings her face close to Naruto's and kisses him. Once he is out of his own world, Naruto reciprocates the kiss. 2 hours later, as Naruto stands at the exit of Wave, he remembers the agreement he had with the villagers of Wave and of Zabuza and Haku. How the village's builders would begin working to create a new ninja village within Nami where both Zabuza and Haku teach taijutsu, kenjutsu, and stealth to any young who wanted to try to be a ninja. In addition, Naruto would leave behind a blood clone to teach everyone about ki. The villagers had decided for Naruto to be their cage as a thank you for saving their village from Gato and considering his strength. Naruto then left the Wave Village for Kami's lookout in order to gain mastery over his new Ascended Saiyan transformation. Little did he know that this new village would be greatly known throughout the elemental nations in the future. It would be known by one name. Namagakure. Chapter 3. Fallout in Konoha. In Konoha, just after Naruto's outburst. After they all heard Naruto's bedroom door slam shut, Minato and Kushina turned their attention to their daughter to find out if she was alright. What they saw when they got close shocked them to the core. There was Naomi, gasping and panting in agony, favoring the ribs on her right side, while blood ran freely down her face from her nose and mouth. The right side of her jaw had swollen to more than 3 times its normal size, and was discolored blood red and dark purple. Her right eye was also beginning to shut at the bottom from the swelling on her jaw and cheek. Naomi. Kushina cried out in shock and fear for her daughter's health as she ran over to her and knelt down to cradle her. Minato called out, Tsunade. We need your help over here. Tsunade ran over and gasped upon seeing Naomi's condition. She immediately began making hand signs before green chakra started to envelop her right hand. Running her hand over Naomi's face and body, she turned to Minato and Kushina. We need to get her to the hospital. Now, she ordered. Minato and Kushina didn't think twice. Minato picked up his daughter and both parents immediately made their way to the hospital, intent on getting their daughter the medical attention she needed. Once Tsunade and her staff had finished patching Naomi up, Minato and Kushina bade her goodnight and left the hospital to return home, both of them furious with Naruto for hurting her so badly. Naruto had broken her jaw, fractured her cheekbone, and left her with 4 broken ribs. Once they returned home, they sat in the living room for hours waiting for Naruto, only leaving to check his room to see if he had snuck back in through his window. When 2 o'clock the next morning rolled around, both of them decided to call it a night. They would make sure that Naruto received the beating of his life for what he did to his sister. Upon waking up that morning, both of them scoured the house but had found no signs of Naruto. He hadn't come back home last night. Their first thoughts were that he was putting off the punishment that he knew was coming, which would only make his punishment that much worse. Minato went into the office while Kushina left to spend some time with her daughter, but not before making a shadow clone to wait for Naruto at home. 8 hours after she had left the house, Kushina had finally returned home, only to see her shadow clone still there waiting. Her clone looked at her and shook her head in the negative before dispelling. Naruto still hadn't come back home. She went through her nightly routine as Minato came back to the house of making dinner and preparing for bed. Both Minato and Kushina each created a shadow clone to wait up all night. They were not going to miss Naruto's return home, and he was not going to get away with what he'd done. The second day proceeded much the same way that the previous day had, with Naruto still not returning home. Upon seeing that Naruto still had not returned home by the morning of the third day, Kushina's anger turned to worry. Where was he? What would keep him away from his home for 3 full days? Granted, it wasn't supposed to be his home that much longer, but he certainly didn't know that, did he? And even if he did, Kushina would at least make sure this wouldn't come to be. As much of a bad apple as he was still her son. And she'd be damned if she would let him be thrown out into the cold. Minato, she said to her husband that morning before he left for the office, I'm starting to get worried. Worried? Why? What do you mean, why? Our son hasn't been home in 3 days. Minato looked at her in confusion before giving her a dismissive, carefree smirk. It's probably just as well. This isn't his home anymore, anyway, you know that. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped back indignantly. He may not be our heir anymore, but he's still our son, and I won't allow him to be thrown out of this house. Minato just laughed before flashing away, leaving Kushina with a bewildered expression and a bad feeling in her gut. She decided to create 2 shadow clones today, one to visit Naomi and the other to wait for Naruto to hopefully return to the house. She would spend the day trying to find her son in the hope that something terrible hadn't happened. Makoto Uchiha was a nervous wreck. She had been wandering around frantically asking any of the people that Naruto was on good terms with if they had seen him. She had gone to the Ichirakus and talked to both of them, though they hadn't seen him, either. Tsuki and Ayame were just as worried as Makoto was. Naruto ate lunch there every single day without fail, and something horrible must have happened for him not to show up there. Naruto had also won over all of Tsuki's regular lunchtime patrons with his kind and friendly ways. Even those who had hated him at first couldn't help but warm up to him once they had gotten to know him. They were just as worried as Makoto and the Ichirakus, knowing that Naruto's absence from the stand was a very bad sign. When they even closed up shop for a few days in an effort to help Makoto look for the boy, his customers also lent what aid they could to help find him. Unfortunately, all of their efforts were for naught. After 4 days of searching, Makoto knew that if Naruto wanted to be found, he would have been by now. He had left the village. And it was all those damn Namikaze's faults. Kushina was now beyond worried. She was frantic and terrified. It had been 2 full days since she'd started actively searching not only the village, but the surrounding areas in an effort to find her missing son. She became even more frantic when she started to see just how little she had thought about him before all of this happened. Last night, as she was preparing dinner, she prepared her habitual 3 places at the table, only to realize that Naomi was still in the hospital, so she removed one of them. Thoughts of Naomi led her to thoughts on how she ended up in the hospital, which led her thoughts to Naruto. Why hadn't she prepared a place for him at the dinner table? Recounting as many times as she could have when she had set the table, she always saw only 3 places there. When was the last time she had prepared Naruto a meal? This realization had prompted her to drop what she was doing and head back out for another round of searching right then and there. She didn't even bother creating a clone to visit Naomi or wait at the house for the next day. She hadn't spoken to Minato since then, and she hadn't spent the night at home, either, opting to search through the night and well into the morning in the hopes of finding Naruto. The sun was currently approaching its high noonday position. As she leapt through the trees, so many questions plagued her mind. Where could he have gone? Was he alright, or did something happen to him? Was he laying hurt or dead somewhere? These questions had prompted her to reflect on her relationship with him. When she thought back, she realized that she couldn't recall any moments or times that would show the two of them as having any kind of relationship with each other, at least, none to speak of. Was there a time where she spoke to him where she wasn't angry about something? She then started to recall all of the trouble she saw him getting into, only to realize that she had never actually seen any of it. All she had to go on concerning Naruto's troublemaking ways was hearsay. When did she ever ask Naruto's accusers to prove what had happened? And what about when she got Naruto's side of the story? She stopped dead in her tracks as she gasped loudly. When had she ever gotten his side of the story? Come to think of it, whenever she saw him, he never caused any trouble. In fact, any time Naomi taunted him at home, he usually ignored her or got up and walked away. In fact, what he did to Naomi on their birthday was completely unlike anything she'd ever seen him do before. He didn't cause trouble at home, he was usually doing things like, what, exactly? She realized that she didn't know what he did. She didn't even know what he liked to do. In fact, the only people that she knew really cared for her son were Makoto Uchiha and the Ichirakus. And she only knew that because she saw how they responded to the announcement of Naomi's being named heir to the clan. Who were his friends? Did he even have any? Naruto, when I find you, I promise you I'm going to be a better mother to you from now on. Please, just be okay, she thought to herself, hoping that Naruto might by some miracle sense her sentiment. Wait a minute, Ichirakus. If there was one thing she did know about her son, it was that Naruto loved their food. Maybe they've seen him. She began to feel a glimmer of hope as she sped back to the village intent on getting to the ramen stand. Upon returning to the village, she made her way to the ramen stand, only to see the metal gates pulled down with a sign posted saying, "Closed until Monday." Why? Why did Kyuki close up shop? That wasn't like him. He loved his job, and the only reasons she could think of for him to ever close up shop would be that he was on his deathbed or in the hospital, or if Ayame was sick or missing. Missing? Was he also searching for Naruto? He hadn't even come here. Kushina began to hyperventilate as terror-stricken panic seemed to seize her. She collapsed to her knees and put her hand to her chest in an effort to calm herself. As she closed her eyes, she worked as hard as she could to calm herself down. She took deliberate, painstakingly slow breaths. She thought of happy times, happy places. She made a concerted last-ditch effort to calm herself down by imagining all of the happy times that she would have, and the happy memories that she would create with Naruto as soon as she found him and brought him home. Sensing herself growing calmer and relaxing, she slowly stood up and worked to get her bearings. Looking around, she saw that many of the passers-by had stopped and were looking at her in concern. "I'm fine, everyone," she reassured them all, prompting them to all to go on their way, before she called out and stopped them all, "Wait a moment." As they stopped and turned to her, she asked them all with genuine concern, "I don't suppose any of you have seen my son in the last few days, have you?" They all responded in the negative, thought some did it with a sneer or a derogatory comment about how they hadn't seen the worthless demon trash, or other such insults. Such comments caused Kushina to release some killing intent unconsciously, making everyone move along rather quickly. Well, who else can I talk to that might know something? She thought to herself once more as she went through the people she knew in her mind. It suddenly hit her, Makoto. But that idea went just as quickly as it came, no. She just lost her entire clan except for her son. She has enough to worry about right now. I should leave her alone. But I'm running out of options. What should I do? I can't think of anyone else, and Ichiraku's doesn't open again for 3 more days. She moved on, choosing to continue searching on her own until the ramen stand opened back up. 8 days. It had been 8 days since the twins' birthday, and there was still no sign of Naruto anywhere. Minato had told her to give up, as Naruto wasn't their problem anymore. He had learned the hard way that this was the wrong thing to say to the frantic mother. Kushina had almost gone feral when Minato had told her to give up on finding the failure, catching him completely off guard, throwing him to the ground and kicking him where it would hurt the most, his jewels. She had relentlessly assaulted his groin before attacking his face and beating him black, blue and bloody. Only when the Anbu had showed up when Minato flared his chakra had Kushina been restrained and the Hokage brought to the hospital to receive medical attention. The injuries to his face weren't serious, he would heal from those without even scarring. But his manhood was another matter. Minato didn't even want to know the extent of the damage to his goods, but he walked out of the hospital with the knowledge that he would never father children ever again. That had angered him, but this was his wife. He loved her, and he had kept things from her. He thought that maybe what she'd done to him was fair, and that maybe she'd call it even after being so upset from what Minato had persuaded her to do in endorsing his plan of naming Naomi their heir. Naomi was still in the hospital undergoing observation. Minato would be coming out of the hospital today, no doubt expecting an apology from her for his injuries. Kushina chuckled bitterly at the idea, there was no way in hell that she would give him one. What she did to him, he had coming. And if he didn't change his ways quickly, she might just leave him and move out. That way, she could give Naruto a new home without fear of Minato and Naomi making things hard for him. Ichiraku Ramen came into her sight, and to her relief, the stand was open. She ran to the stand and pulled the flap open, allowing her entry. She looked around, seeing several people eating several variations of Kyuki's delectable noodles. Her eyes stopped as they focused on a head of flowing black hair. "Makoto," she called out, running up to the bar next to her friend and taking the empty seat to her right. "You," she responded coldly when she caught sight of Kushina, "what do you want?" Kushina was unnerved at the coldness in Makoto's expression, as well as the disgust in her voice. Finding her courage, Kushina replied, "Makoto, listen, I'm so sorry about your clan and family. I know that you're going through a difficult time right now, but you think my feelings towards you have anything to do with my grieving over my—" Makoto began incredulously, interrupting Kushina before being interrupted herself. "Makoto, have you seen my son since his birthday?" Makoto's eyes went wide in shock. She couldn't believe the audacity of this woman who threw her son out of her home and family without even so much as a guilty look. But on the other hand, she could hear the desperation in Kushina's question. Upon looking more closely at Kushina, it was easy to see the dark circles under her eyes, and that her skin was paler than usual. She was exhausted and frightened, she hadn't slept well in days. She also looked thinner, indicating that she wasn't eating right, either. Makoto's flabbergasted gape softened into a confused frown. "Why do you even care? It's not like you ever cared before." Kushina's desperation caused her to yell at the woman, "Look, I don't know what you think of me at the moment, and to be honest, that doesn't matter right now. I have no idea where my son is, and I've been running myself ragged trying to find him. Do you know where he is or not?" Makoto yelled back, "You've already made it public knowledge that you don't want to concern yourself with him anymore. You kicked him out of your family and out of your home." "No, I didn't kick him out of my home, and I'm not going to. He may have stopped being our heir, but that doesn't change the fact that he's my son. I know what's usually done when a living heir is removed, but I'm not going to let that happen to him." She yelled back, prompting Makoto to stand and drum Kushina across the face with her open right hand, sending her out of her seat and sprawling to the floor. While this was happening, murmurs could be heard from the other patrons. Kushina was rather surprised to hear some of the questions being asked. The Hokage and his wife kicked Naruto out. Why would they do that to a great kid like Naruto? How could the Hokage do that to his son and then preach about how the village is like a family? "Shocked, are you?" Makoto shouted at the top of her lungs, now enraged at Kushina. "That was how Naruto felt when you slapped him. And don't you dare try to insult my intelligence by telling me that you intend to keep Naruto at home after you've banished him from your clan and family. You know full well that when an heir is banished from a clan, that you no longer have any legal right to provide them with shelter." "What?" Kushina breathed out, in shock at this revelation as tears began to escape her eyes. "No, I didn't know, no, that can't be. What the hell's going on out there?" Kyuki could be heard yelling from the back as he came running up to the front of the store so he could see what all the commotion was about. Iyame was hot on his heels. Kushina leapt to her feet, forgetting about Makoto's slap, and called out in a tear-filled yell, "Kyuki! Kushina!" he exclaimed, surprised at her appearance, despite the fact that he didn't want her in his stand. "You have a—" Kushina immediately interrupted him, tears of frightened desperation flowing freely down her face. "Kyuki, please. I need to know if you know anything at all about where my son is. I've been searching for him 6 days, and I haven't slept at all in the last 3. I've searched the village high and low, and I've also searched every square inch in a 30-mile radius. Please, if you know anything, tell me where he is." She broke down into sobs and collapsed to her knees. Neither Makoto nor Tsuki could remain angry at the pathetic sight before them. Ayame, however, was a different story. "If you haven't found him by now, you're never going to," she yelled, prompting Kushina to open her eyes and bring her head up to look at the girl, though she didn't stop sobbing. Ayame continued, "The only thing we can say for sure is that he's left the village. If he doesn't want to be found, he's not going to be. And I'm sure that you and that," Ayame gritted her teeth, "that fucking monster that you're married to are the last people he wants to be found by. Get out of our stand. You and your family aren't welcome here anymore." Kushina winced and cried even harder at Ayame's cruel words. Ayame simply turned on her heel and ran into the back, crying herself. She looked to Tsuki and Makoto with a pleading look in her eyes. The two of them looked conflicted in their feelings. On the one hand, they'd seen the callousness with which she could treat her son, but on the other hand, they'd never seen her this concerned or this frantic over anyone before, not even Naomi. "Please," Kushina pleaded more quietly, "I know you're both angry with me, and you have every right to be. I know that up to now, I've failed Naruto as a mother. Since I've been searching, I've had nothing but time to think about things. As I said, I haven't slept. I've been eating erratically. She began to wobble unsteadily before her eyes rolled into the back of her head and she collapsed. Makoto, thankfully, was able to move fast enough to catch her. She looked at Tsuki, who looked bewildered, not knowing what to think about this whole scenario. Makoto put a hand to Kushina's forehead and snapped her gaze to Tsuki, "She's burning up." Makoto reached out with her chakra to see if she could get a read on Kushina's condition, and her chakra's almost depleted. I don't think she was kidding when she said she hasn't been sleeping or eating. "Ayame," Tsuki called to his daughter, who came back out after a few seconds. It was clear that she'd been crying, but she immediately stopped when she saw a passed-out Kushina being held up by Makoto. Tsuki instructed his daughter, "I need you to handle things here for a while. We need to get Kushina to the hospital." Ayame just nodded dumbly as Tsuki took Kushina from Makoto's arms while she flared her chakra brilliantly so that an Anbu could respond and find them. When a hawk-masked Anbu came, he saw Kushina's condition. Without even needing to be told what to do, he grabbed the woman, said one word, "Hospital," to Makoto and Tsuki, who both nodded, and used Shunshin to take Kushina to the hospital. Makoto placed a hand on Tsuki and used Shunshin herself to get the two of them there faster. On the street just outside the ramen stand, one Asuma Sarutobi was just returning from a mission, and just happened to overhear the conversation that took place inside the ramen stand. He didn't like what he heard at all, and decided that his report could wait. He could use a meal, and it sounded like the ramen stand would also be the best place to get some answers. Kushina had been admitted to Konoha Hospital for chakra depletion, sleep deprivation and dehydration. She really hadn't been taking care of her most basic needs in her preoccupation towards finding her son. Neither Tsuki nor Makoto had any idea what to make of this. Was it possible that Kushina really didn't know that it was against the law in Konoha to allow a disowned clan heir to live on clan property? They had been waiting for 2 hours in the hospital's main lobby, waiting to hear on Kushina's condition. As they were waiting, they saw Minato making his way through the main lobby on his way out. He looked terrible. His face was bruised and discolored black, blue and dark purple, and he waddled from side to side, grimacing with each step, as though walking was extremely painful for him. When had he been admitted to the hospital, and why? Both of them looked at the man with loathing and utter disgust. Minato caught sight of the two and waved at them with a friendly smile. As he made his way over to them, Makoto's face morphed into a furious grimace as she marched right up to him and slapped him hard across the fact, right before spitting in it, shocking not only the Hokage, but every onlooker in the room. "What was that all about, Makoto?" he asked, stunned to near silence by her shocking actions. "You know what that was about, you eviling monster." Makoto screamed at him, causing him to recoil in further surprise while murmurs could be heard all around. "That was for kicking your son out of your family so heartlessly." Again, the rumors could be heard. The Hokage did what to his son? But he's always talking about how the village is a family. Would he really do something like that? If he did that to his own son, What would he do to the rest of us if it suited him? Minato started feeling apprehensive at the comments going around. He turned to Makoto and told her discreetly, "Can we talk about this more at another time, and in an area that's not so public?" "Oh, you'd like that, wouldn't you?" Makoto yelled back, "What's wrong? Too much of a coward to take responsibility for your actions." "Huh, this is neither the time nor the place, Makoto." Minato growled back through gritted teeth. "And why is?" Makoto began anew, only to stop when Tyuki put a hand on her shoulder. He gave her an understanding glance, at which she turned around and walked off, returning to her seat. "Thanks, Tyuki," Minato expressed. Tyuki's response was to face the Hokage with a grim expression. "From this day forward, you and your family are no longer welcome in my establishment. Don't ever show your faces there, again." "Tyuki, come on." Minato objected. "No, not after what you did to your son. Unlike you, we love Naruto, and his persecutors are our enemies, too." Tyuki also returned to his seat after having said what he needed to say. Minato again looked around and caught a few additional murmurs that everyone else in the lobby was uttering out. "It looks like our Hokage isn't who he claims to be. How could he and his family be so hypocritical? What's the big deal? So he threw the demon out of his family." That last comment made Makoto snap. She charged at the man who said it, enraged, and proceeded to pound him senseless. It took a couple of Anbu and several orderlies to remove Makoto from the man and restrain her while they took him back for immediate treatment. Most of them remarked at the irony of the situation. A man actually got injured and severely beaten at the hospital. Makoto didn't know what his condition was, she frankly didn't care. Minato left the hospital to the Anbu that was outside waiting for him so that he could get to his office. On his way out, however, he couldn't help but ponder what had happened. He never anticipated such a backlash for kicking the failure out of his house. He didn't realize that there were so many people in the village that actually liked the boy, despite his own efforts. If this kept up, he might be dealing with riots, and possibly even civil war, depending on how this whole situation might escalate. He was no fool, he knew how quickly word spread in his village, and if the people's responses in the hospital were any indicator, then rough times were indeed ahead. His future as Hokage was starting to look a little more uncertain. He needed to start planning to keep his village under control. Naomi was the child of prophecy, so setting her aside for her failure of a brother was not an option that he even going to entertain. He would not allow Naruto back into the family, and he would not acknowledge that he did anything wrong. But if he didn't do that, then what would happen? There was no point in thinking about that right now. He needed to get back to work. He could use his power as Hokage to contain this situation, and for now, that would have to do. Roughly an hour later, Shizune came into the lobby and called for Makoto and Tyuki. Both of them responded immediately and went to her. "Kushina is going to be fine. We're rehydrating her and feeding her intravenously, and she's currently asleep in the recovery ward," she explained to the two of them. "Thank you, Shizune. When will she be able to receive visitors?" Makoto asked, relieved that Kushina would be okay. "Well, my guess is that she'll be out for at least the next several hours. You're welcome to wait in her room until she wakes up. It's room 247 just down this hallway." "We'd like that," Tyuki answered before adding, "Oh, and we saw the Hokage coming out of the lobby, he looked pretty banged up. Can you tell us anything about that?" Shizune pursed her lips together before asking the two of them to follow her into an empty room. Once they were in there, she closed the door and explained what she knew, that Minato told her to give up on finding the failure because he wasn't their problem anymore, that Kushina had attacked Minato in a rage, and sterilized him through brute force. Both Makoto and Tyuki were beyond shocked at this. Maybe Kushina's intentions towards her son were good, after all. They both thanked Shizune for telling them and gave her their word that they wouldn't breathe a word of the conversation to anyone. It wouldn't do for Shizune to be barred from practicing medicine because she broke doctor-patient confidentiality, after all. The pair of them made their way to Kushina's room to wait for her to awaken. Upon seeing her unconscious form with tubes and needles protruding from her body, they both felt saddened that events had brought her to this. However, this didn't change the fact that they were both quite angry, and they would demand answers from the woman once she was conscious again. Asuma wasn't a happy man at the moment, not in the least. His parents kicked Naruto out of their family by naming his sister their heir. What the hell were they thinking? Minato was no different than his own father, the bastard that he was. In fact, Minato was worse. At least his old man never kicked any of his kids out of the house for completely groundless reasons. He simply ignored and neglected all of them while they were growing up, and even though he was cold to them, Asuma knew that Hiruzen Sarutobi wasn't heartless. He loved them, he just consciously made the decision to love the village more. But Minato, how the hell were his shinobi supposed to respect the leadership of a man who would sell out and betray his own flesh and blood when it suited him? Did he really expect his shinobi to follow orders that could lead them to their deaths if he wasn't willing to lead them there and possibly die himself? Asuma didn't like the fact that most of the missions he was sent on were extended-length missions that took place outside the village. He always wanted to be here so that he could help Naruto out more. He knew the boy was wicked smart, and a lot stronger and more skilled than he let on. In fact, he wanted to be the boy's Junin sensei once he graduated from the academy so that he could play a bigger role in unleashing the boy's full potential. He knew it in his gut, Naruto was greatness itself, just waiting to come out, a huge chunk of diamond waiting to be etched and polished. Asuma couldn't help the smile that crossed his face as he recalled the first time he met the monkey-tailed boy. Flashback no jutsu. So you're Naruto Namikaze, huh? Asuma asked a 6-year-old Naruto Namikaze with a friendly smile. He had heard about the boy through several people, most of them derogatory towards the boy, although Makoto Uchiha and the Ichirakus seemed to like him. Intrigued by this child, Asuma, for some reason, felt compelled to search for him and introduce himself. He'd found him when he sensed a different chakra signature coming from one of the training grounds, where he now found himself. Yeah, that's me, Naruto began somewhat warily, which Asuma noticed, and you are? Asuma Sarutobi, kiddo. Nice to meet ya, he introduced himself and extended his hand for the boy to shake. You too, Mr. Sarutobi, Naruto replied, again somewhat warily, though he took the hand offered to him and shook it. Asuma laughed and told the boy, you can just call me Asuma, Naruto. I've heard a good little bit about you. Naruto's eyes narrowed into a frown at that. Do you believe everything you hear? Actually, no I don't, Asuma answered him straightforwardly. I prefer to make judgments based on my own observations rather than on hearsay. Seeing that Asuma meant what he just said, Naruto's frown became a confused one. You're not like the other villagers. So I've seen. I've actually been away from the village for a while. I just finished serving as one of the Guardian Ninja 12. So I've spent the last 8 years in the capital with the daimyo and his family. Really? Naruto suddenly became excited. Wow, I've heard you have to be, like, crazy strong to be part of the Guardians. Asuma, for his part, was impressed. I'm surprised that someone your age knows of us. That's quite impressive. Naruto simply smiled and scratched the back of his head somewhat sheepishly. Yeah, well. Asuma just studied the boy before him. After a few moments, his gaze landed on Naruto's tail. Naruto noticed where his gaze landed and began to grow angry. Yeah, I've got a tail. The villagers love to make fun of me for it. Is that what you came here to do? Whoa, easy there, Asuma responded calmly, raising his hands as a peacemaking gesture. That's not what I came here for at all. In fact, I think your tail is pretty cool. Did you know that we Sarutobi are known for having monkey summons as partners? Okay, now that's cool. Naruto exclaimed, completely changing his tune, before he asked, could you show me? Asuma thought for a moment before answering, why not? With that, Asuma went through the hand signs for the summoning, placed his hand on the ground and shouted, summoning jutsu. With a poof of smoke, a huge ape appeared wearing a Konoha headband. Said ape turned to Asuma and asked, Asuma, what is the reason you have summoned me? King Enma, I wanted to introduce you to Naruto Namikaze, the son of the 4th Hokage, Asuma responded, extending his arm to point in Naruto's direction. Enma's eyes followed Asuma's arm and landed on the boy in question, immediately taking notice of the tail behind him that was wagging back and forth unconsciously. A human with a monkey's tail. Interesting, I've never seen such a thing before, he observed as he immediately snatched Naruto up by the tail. Gya! Naruto bellowed out in pain, Lemego, Lemego, Lemego. Enma immediately dropped Naruto, who gently cradled his mangled tail in his hands and rubbed it gingerly. My apologies, boy. I didn't realize that your tail was so sensitive, Enma offered. Yeah, Naruto replied through his pain-filled grimace, anytime someone grabs my tail, my whole body freezes up in pain, I can't stand it. Might I offer a suggestion, then? Enma asked. Yes, sir. If your tail is long enough for you to wrap around your waist and tuck the end underneath the base, then try doing that. It would keep your tail out of the way, and it wouldn't give anyone a protrusion to grab onto. Naruto stared at King Enma before adopting a thoughtful expression. Sir, I think I might just try that. Thank you. Enma nodded before leaving Naruto with one last tidbit. I look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future, Naruto Namikaze. You appear to have more in common with my kin than other humans. And with that, he vanished, leaving Naruto and Asuma alone once more. Asuma walked Naruto back into town and treated him to ramen before walking him back home. Kai. Minato Namikaze was going to get a piece of Asuma Sarutobi's mind the moment he was done giving his report. Minato was getting extremely annoyed. Why? One of his ninja, Asuma Sarutobi, had signed back into the village over 3 hours ago, and he still had not reported in to be debriefed on his mission. He didn't like it when his shinobi didn't follow protocol in a timely manner. It was something that always annoyed him about Kakashi, but at one of his best Junin and his student, he could let it slide. Asuma, being at or near Kakashi's level, could also be allowed some leeway, though it didn't mean Minato had to like it. An hour had passed since Minato had gone back into his office, and he was feeling much calmer, now that he was settling into his normal routine. He never thought he would be grateful for excessive paperwork that would keep him away from his home. He was glad for the distraction that work provided him. No crazy wives looking to permanently injure him, nobody to spit in his face or ban him and his family from their businesses, no comments on how he was a monster or a terrible father, or anything of the like, just sheets of paper with little scribbles of ink on them that he could stamp and sign. The irony of his looking forward to doing paperwork wasn't lost on him. He decided to take a break after finishing the biggest stack of papers. He sat there, leaning back in his chair with his eyes closed. His mind began to wander back to how everything in his home and life had just gone to hell after that little bastard knocked his baby girl around and landed her in the hospital, Naomi's absence at home. Followed by Kushina's getting worried about Naruto, her staying out of the house and not cooking, her beating and sterilizing him after he told her to give up on the worthless little failure that he kicked out of his family, Makoto and Tyuki saying the things they said to him, and in public, no less. What the hell was going on? First of all, Kushina never worried about Naruto before, so why did she get worried now of all times? And what was that stupidity about keeping him there at the house? What did she expect to happen to him? Did she really think that he was just going to let Naruto stay there under his roof when he was no longer part of the family? And then, why did she beat him so mercilessly when he told her to stop looking for him? It's not like it mattered whether he was found or not, and he was no longer their problem, so why? Makoto and Tyuki, he could understand to a degree, as they, for reasons that were beyond him, were both rather fond of Naruto. Minato was brought out of his thoughts as his door opened. The object of his annoyed thoughts, Asuma Sarutobi, entered and closed the door behind him. Junin Asuma Sarutobi reporting in. My mission was successful, he offered with a bow to his commander. Excellent Asuma. Please give me the details. Asuma reported the details of his mission, while Minato nodded in approval at Asuma's actions and the facts of the mission. Congratulations on a mission well done, Asuma. You're dismissed, Minato offered, but Asuma had more to say. Hokage-sama, there is something else that I would like to speak to you about. Please don't interrupt me until I'm done. This is a matter that's rather personal to me, says Asuma in a serious tone. Go ahead and get whatever you need to say off your chest, said Minato, curious as to what he is going to say. Okay, he took a deep breath before he bellowed out, using wind chakra to increase the volume of his voice, what the is wrong with you? When I heard that a new Hokage had been appointed, I had hoped that he wouldn't commit the same sins his predecessor did, which was sacrificing his family for the sake of his village. Excuse me? Minato asked in shock. Asuma continued, not lowering the volume of his voice at all, I mean, come on. What's the point of having the village love you if your family is in shambles? How could you do what you did to Naruto? He did nothing to deserve it, and what's more, how in the hell can you expect any of us to respect your leadership if you're willing to betray your son and sell him out just because it suits you? Minato gave Asuma a warning glare. That sounds an awful lot like treason to me, Asuma. It's not treason, you idiot. It's just the logical conclusion that any leaf shinobi worth their salt would draw from all of this. It's what I'm already starting to hear all over the village. And frankly, they're right. Minato stood up and looked Asuma dead in the eye. I did this because I knew that my daughter would be very important to this world, that she would save it if she was on the right path. So you're trying to make your daughter into something that could well be beyond her abilities and her character. Asuma said in disgust, and because of your idiotic delusions, your only son had to suffer and be beaten right under your nose. Minato simply looks away, not meeting his eyes. I'm a clan head, and the Hokage. I don't have to explain myself to anyone, least of all you. Asuma narrowed his eyes as he studied the man in front of him before asking in a low voice, I know the face of a criminal who's about to be exposed when I see one. What exactly aren't you telling me? You're standing on dangerous ground. Right now, Junin Sarutobi, Minato warned him through gritted teeth, leave this office immediately before you say something you're going to regret. Asuma just turned on his heel and walked toward the door, but stopped before he left. Your words are going to come back and bite you in Theon Day. And when they do, I'll be there to laugh my off at your stupidity, and gloat at your utter and well-deserved ruin. With that, he left the room, not even giving Minato the chance to respond. He didn't like that look in Minato's eyes as he talked about his daughter in comparison to his son. There was something sinister about it. The fact that he said he didn't need to explain himself concerning his son's beatings when he had the full power and authority to stop them also didn't sit well with him. Was it possible that he not only allowed the beatings to take place, but might have even had a hand in causing them? Two complete disappointments, the third, and the fourth. Asuma knew what the village needed in its Hokage. The leaf needed a Hokage like the first and second, men that didn't sacrifice family for the village, and at the same time, men that didn't sacrifice the village for family, either. They sacrificed themselves so that neither the village nor their families had to suffer or be sacrificed. It suddenly struck Asuma, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. He was at least as talented as his father, or even as Minato, in the shinobi arts. He was certainly better at taijutsu than either one of them, particularly armed taijutsu, and he had far greater mastery over his elements than either of them did as well. While he didn't use fuinjutsu a lot, it was an area that he had some skill in, and it came pretty easily to him as a discipline of study. His mind was made up. If someone needed to perform the job of Hokage right, then by Kami, he would be the one to do it. And he would ensure that Naruto was given justice and restitution for these atrocities and affronts that were committed against him. It was time for a fifth Hokage to take the hat. He walked out of Hokage Tower to begin planning his investigation of Minato's actions, as well as to make plans to seriously vamp up his training. If he wanted to be Hokage, he would have to be able to at least stand toe-to-toe with Minato Namikaze in battle, if not best him. He had to be in a position to take the hat before he involved the daimyo in getting Minato removed from office. He couldn't take the chance that yet another disappointment would be given the job if he got the daimyo involved too soon. On his way to his home, it occurred to him that the Hokage's wife had been taken to the hospital. Based on what he overheard of her conversation in the ramen stand, he thought she might be interested to know about the conversation he just had with her husband in his office, as well as the suspicions that it brought. He changed direction, heading for the hospital. Kushina slowly opened her eyes as she returned to consciousness. Blinking at the glaring lights, she took a minute to let her eyesight adjust before looking around to get her bearings. She could see various medical machines of all kinds, with tubes that seemed to be connected to her. Looking herself over, she saw that there were several needles in her arms, secreting various chemicals and fluids into her bloodstream. Why am I in the hospital? How did I get here? She asked herself as she continued to look around the room. Her gaze landed on the two people she could last remember interacting with, Makoto Uchiha and Kyuki Ichiraku. Both of them were sitting on the other side of the room, not facing her. Makoto. Kyuki? She asked tiredly, garnering their attention. Both of them turned to look her way in response to hearing her voice. Welcome back, Kushina, Makoto offered softly with a sympathetic smile. How do you feel? Drained, Kushina responded with a weak smile before adding with a shiver, and kind of cold. Is there another blanket in here, anywhere? I'll get you one, Kushina, Tuki responded as he got up and went into the closet, pulling 2 extra blankets and bringing them to Kushina before unfolding them and placing them over her. Thank you, Tuki, she responded gratefully. With a sad smile, Tuki simply nodded before returning to his seat. Makoto stepped out of the room to inform one of the staff on duty that Kushina had woken up. Kushina turned her gaze to Tuki and asked, "Did you and Makoto bring me here?" "That's right," Tuki began, "we also found out what you did to Minato in your son's defense a few days ago as well. Listen, maybe we were both a little hasty in condemning you." Kushina interrupted him, "No, Tuki. You weren't. Nothing you said to me was unfair. I've already thought about most of the things you and Makoto said to me. I realized that I never did get concrete evidence of any wrongdoing by Naruto, and I never did get his side of the story, either. It hurt me so much to realize," her eyes began to well up once again, "that I can't even remember when I might have had a single interaction with Naruto that was happy. I don't really know how things came to this, either. But what hurts the most, is that I realized that I don't even know my son." Kushina sniffled as her voice started to break once more, but before she could continue, Makoto walked in with none other than Tsunade. "Hi, Kushina," Tsunade offered warmly before frowning in concern, "What's wrong?" She began to sob out, "I'm the world's worst mother." Tsunade frowned in surprise before responding, "Kushina, that's not true. You're a great mother to Naomi." Kushina interrupted her, raising her voice, "Naomi's not my only child." Tsunade flinched at her outburst, as well as at the look of agonizing torment on her face. Kushina continued, "I was a terrible mother to Naruto. Why didn't I care for my son?" She looked Tsunade dead in the eye, "Why didn't you care for my son? Why didn't anyone in this family of monsters love him? Why were Makoto and the Ichirakus the only people who cared about my baby boy?" Kushina couldn't continue, as she simply broke down into bawling, racking sobs. Makoto moved over to her bedside and put her arms around her friend, allowing her to weep into her shoulder and chest while stroking her head and rubbing her back in an effort to soothe and comfort her. Tuki followed suit a few moments later, laying a comforting hand on Kushina's shoulder. Tsunade was stricken. Did Kushina really think of her family as monsters? As her daughter's godparents, that would include her and Jiraiya. Wait a minute, weren't they also Naruto's godparents? But then, why did she act as though Minato and Kushina only had one child? Granted, she rarely if ever saw Naruto, he just wasn't ever at home, but, still. Could she really have put the boy out of her mind to such a degree that she didn't even ponder his existence? Granted, she knew just like everyone else that he was a troublemaker, but even most troublemakers only became troublemakers for the attention that causing trouble brought to them. Tsunade's face morphed into a horrified gape. They really had neglected him to that degree. What had they done? She needed to talk to Jiraiya about this as soon as possible. "Kushina," Tsunade began, trying to hold back tears of her own and garnering the redhead's attention, "you're right. We did neglect and ignore him, but it's not too late for us to change. Where is he at the moment? We can go get him and we can show him that we do care for him." "Tsunade, that isn't possible right now," Makoto interrupted her. "What do you mean?" Tsunade asked in response, tears of fear beginning to roll down her face. "The reason that Kushina is in here is because for the last week, she's pushed herself to exhaustion and even to near death in an effort to find Naruto so that she could bring him home. This is the first time she's slept in 4 days, and she had depleted her chakra to keep herself moving. She's searched the village high and low, and even scoured the countryside and forests 30 miles out in every direction," she explained before finishing with grim firmness, "Naruto is long gone." "How could he be long gone?" Tsunade demanded, "He's a child. How will he survive out there? How will he be able to keep himself safe?" A new voice, unmistakable male, answered her question, "Naruto's much, much more powerful than you can imagine, Lady Tsunade." All 4 of the room's occupants turned to the sound of the voice, all of them surprised to see who the owner of it was. "Asuma Sarutobi?" Kushina asked, confused by his sudden appearance, "What brings you here? And, what do you know about my son?" Asuma sighed before coming into the room and closing the door. He placed a silencing seal on the wall beside the door and activated it. Once done with that, he turned to the room's occupants and began to answer, I met Naruto a few years back when he was training in one of the more out-of-the-way training grounds. He's one very determined boy, and he's also quite powerful and talented. I planned on being his Junin sensei once he graduated from the academy because I wanted to help him realize his full potential. He looked at all 4 of the room's occupants and stated with conviction, Naruto will without a doubt become the single most powerful shinobi that this village has ever produced. Even the first 2 Hokages will pale in comparison to what Naruto will become. That's the kind of potential Naruto possesses, and I think it's a shame and a crime that that potential hasn't even been tapped yet. Kushina and Tsunade looked on in awe and surprise. Did Naruto truly possess that kind of potential? How was it that they didn't even notice? They knew the answer to the question as soon as they asked it of themselves, they didn't care enough to look. Makoto and Kyuki, on the other hand, both wore knowing and admiring smiles, feeling in their guts that what Asuma said was indeed true. Asuma regarded them all once more, can I count on your discretion? All of you. They all frowned in confusion or in thought before nodding in the affirmative. All right, then. What's discussed here stays here for now, agreed. Again, a round of nods was his response. Lady Kushina, if you don't mind telling me, why exactly did you strip Naruto of his inheritance and give it to his sister? And what were your plans for him afterwards? Kushina looked down and closed her eyes, collecting her thoughts before beginning. Well, my reasons for it were due to the reputation that Naruto had developed throughout the village as a violent delinquent. People everywhere were accusing him of bringing shame to our family, and so Minato talked to me about naming Naomi our heir, so that our family's honor and good name would be preserved. I was still going to allow him to live at home with his family, even if he wasn't our heir anymore. He's still my son, and I wasn't about to let him be thrown out of his own house. In Uzushio, there were many Uzumakis who were disinherited for whatever reason, but we never threw them out of our homes. They were family, and we didn't do that to them. Kushina, who is it that told you that Naruto was a problem child? Makoto asked curiously. Most everyone I talked to in the village, passers-by, village councilors, you name it. So you took the word of people who despise him and would gladly gut him with a smile over that of your son. Your own flesh and blood. Kushina snapped up and looked Makoto dead in the eye. Makoto, do you really think I hadn't thought about that? It's just that literally everyone I would talk to would tell me the same thing, and different eyewitnesses that I talked to at different times would have stories that match, and that would also check out, as in, Naruto was where they said he was at the time of these altercations, and they would say who was involved, and the names would all match up. He would always come home with cuts and bruises as well. It was all just so perfect that none of it could have been made up. But what if it was in fact fabricated? Asuma asked nobody in particular, his finger to his chin as he looked down and thought. What do you mean? Tsunade asked. Think about it for a minute, Asuma explained. Kyuki, Ayame told me about the time where Naruto beat down 3 Chunin and 2 full-grown civilian men when he was, 7? You see, it's things like that that I'm talking about. Kushina exclaimed in an effort to defend her reasoning. Kushina, Kyuki turned to her, the reason Naruto did that to those men was because they were in the process of tearing off my little girl's clothes so that they could rape her. Both Kushina's and Tsunade's eyes went wide. Kushina, in shock, breathed out, what? That's right, Kyuki answered her matter-of-factly, Naruto beat those men up defending my daughter's virtue and dignity. But that, Kushina began to look this way and that in an effort to wrap her mind around this new information. Why wasn't I told? You never gave Naruto the chance to tell you, Makoto answered. No, that's not what I mean, Kushina responded. I mean, yes, of course I should have given him the chance to explain himself, but why wasn't I told by anyone else? It is rather strange that a crime committed by Leaf Shinobi against a Leaf citizen within the village walls wasn't made public record, isn't it? Especially when it's required by law. Asuma offered. But how can that be? Tsunade asked. That's a situation where even if Naruto had been allowed to explain, only Kyuki and Ayame would have backed him, and Kushina might not have believed him anyway, precisely because there's no public record of such an event. Do you still think that fabrication of Naruto's behavioral issues is too far-fetched to be believed? Asuma asked, bringing them all to the conclusion that they knew to be true. And aside from that, Lady Kushina, you mentioned that Naruto always came home with bruises and injuries from his so-called fights with other children or bullies, is that right? That's right, Kushina answered. And yet he hospitalized 3 Chunin-level shinobi and 2 full-grown civilian men, and walked away from the encounter without so much as a scratch. See where I'm going with this? Kushina and Tsunade both gasped. Tsunade was the one to answer. Naruto, he couldn't have gotten his injuries from fighting children or even teenagers. He couldn't have been injured unless, Tsunade pondered a moment, unless he let them do it. Asuma nodded in the affirmative. But why would he let people hurt him? Kushina asked in desperation, and why didn't he come and talk to me about it? I'm his mother, I would have helped him or done something. Kushina, would you really? Makoto asked patiently. Kushina looked stricken at the question, while Tsunade looked indignant. You didn't know any of this before, Makoto proceeded to explain herself. You always operated under the assumption that Naruto was causing trouble. You would have simply thought that he was lying and trying to lay blame elsewhere. Aside from that, the reason that Naruto let them do it is because he's not a violent boy, unless he has very good reason to be. He probably stood there and let his attackers beat him up. He's always healed and been made stronger after every beating somehow, anyway. If you were to ask Naomi just what she did to provoke Naruto into hurting her so badly, I somehow think that you'd find her answer interesting. Kushina's face morphed into a saddened grimace as her eyes welled up once more. She hung her head and began to cry once more as she lamented through her tears, what have I done? This time it was Tsunade who came to her bedside and wrapped her arms around the woman in soothing comfort. Tsunade began to shed tears of her own. Her own blissful ignorance of the situation was now causing her own heart to break as guilt made itself known. Several minutes later, Asuma began once more, I'm afraid there's more. Kushina looked at him and steeled her gaze directly at him, please tell me everything. I want to know it all. I need to know. Your husband is somehow involved in all of this. I wouldn't be surprised if he's involved your daughter as well. Kushina's eyes went wide in shock. She began to hyperventilate once more, though this time, Tsunade was quick to find a paper bag for her to breathe into. Giving her the bag, Kushina put it to her lips and blew her exhale into it, immediately inhaling what she had just exhaled. After a minute of this, she had calmed down once more. Listen, I know this is a lot to spring on you, Asuma began. No. Please don't stop, Asuma, Kushina interrupted him, I want to hear what you have to say. Asuma thought for a moment, then nodded, all right. As I said, I don't know the reasons, but I know that Minato is involved in all of these events somehow. You think he swept them under the rug, or just ignored them? Kushina asked fearfully. No, I know for a fact that he did those things, he as much as admitted it to me. What I think is that his involvement is actually far worse than that. I think he might have had a major part in even orchestrating these fabrications, Asuma told them all gravely. No, that can't be, please, it can't be. Kushina began to grow frantic again until Makoto once more wrapped her arms around her friend, allowing her to cry once more if she needed to. Asuma continued sorrowfully, I'm sorry. I really am. But, when I confronted him about it today, well, he had the look of a guilty criminal who was about to be exposed. He even tried to threaten me when I brought it up. Kushina started bawling once more. The more she learned, the more foolish, heartless and helpless she felt. She was at a loss as to what to do. What could she do to fix this situation? Tyuki also informed Kushina, Kushina, I told Minato earlier that he and his family are no longer welcome at my stand. And I'm going to post a sign saying as much. He smiled softly, I'll make an exception for you alone. Kushina looked Tyuki dead in the eye, don't worry about that, Tyuki. I won't be keeping the Namikaze moniker on my name for that much longer. If Asuma's theories are proven true, I'm done with that man, and if I find out that Naomi played a part in this, then Kami help me, I'm done with her as well. I might be able to help you speed that process along, Asuma offered. Kushina turned to him, how? As one of the former Guardian Ninja 12, I know the daimyo and his family quite well. In the 8 years I served them, I distinguished myself above the others and never once did I ask him for anything of a personal nature. I have quite a few favors I can call in. If you want to leave Minato, I can get your petition directly into his hands to be made legal with only your signature, and I can make it happen within the course of a day. Kushina just stared at him before breathing out, thank you. Asuma just smiled and nodded. Makoto addressed him next, so what happens from here? Well, Asuma answered, I'm going to do some investigating and see what I can't dig up about this whole mess. I promised myself that I would make sure Naruto got some justice and restitution for what's been done to him. He narrowed his eyes at Makoto as he thought about recent developments. Makoto, as the last living adult Uchiha, you have access to the Uchiha Police Force's archives, don't you? Makoto narrowed her eyes just as thoughtfully. As a matter of fact, yes, I do. Could you grant me access to them? I'd be interested to see what's in there about all of this. They've got to have some records about it. The Uchiha matriarch gave the bearded Junin a knowing smile. I'd be happy to do so. Can you meet me at Police HQ in a couple of hours? I'll be there, he replied to her before turning to the other two ladies in the room. Lady Tsunade, Lady Kushina, could the two of you take some time to train me? Train you? Why? Tsunade asked curiously. I need to really vamp up my skills. I'm creating a plan to deal with all of this. My father and the fourth have both fallen so far short of the bar that the first and second Hokages set. Neither of them would have sacrificed their family for the village, nor the village for their family. The only people that they sacrificed were themselves. My old man was already near the end of his life when he sealed the Kyuubi, so it wasn't a big deal to him, while Minato hasn't sacrificed anything of himself at all since he's been in office. I think it's time for a new Hokage, one who would stand up for the will of fire. The room's occupants thought about what he was saying. It was Tsunade who caught on first. Wait a minute, Tsunade began, you don't mean. That's right. Someone's got to do it, and I'm ready to step up and be that someone. But, I need to actually become a Kage-level shinobi first. Lady Tsunade, could you train me in advanced chakra control? Lady Kushina, could you train me in Kenjutsu and Fuinjutsu? I also plan to talk to Might Guy to give me some specialized taijutsu training. Asuma, I would be happy to help you with your ninjutsu, if you want, Makoto offered. From what I've seen here, I think that you would make a fine Hokage and lead us back to what the village was founded on. The will of fire, and the conviction that the Leaf Village is a family. I'm in, Tsunade replied. So am I, Kushina replied immediately after. Thank you, all of you, Asuma expressed his gratitude. We can meet for breakfast tomorrow to discuss the regimen. How does that sound? You can use my stand, Tuki suggested. I'll get everything started early and make you all some breakfast a couple hours before we open. Thanks, Tuki, Tsunade said with a smile. So, Kushina, Makoto addressed her bedridden friend, what are your plans for when you get out of here? I just want my little boy back home and safe. Nothing else mattered to me right now, Kushina answered before her voice began to break yet again, but I can't give him a home, anymore. Kushina, that's not necessarily true, Tsunade interrupted her. If, or rather when, you leave Minato, you'll be moving out of his house and getting your own place. Naruto just can't live on Namikaze clan property anymore, but if you don't either, you can take him in and give him anything you want. And if nothing else, when Naruto comes back, I'll be happy to take him in. You too, if you want. We'll keep looking for him, we won't rest. And when we find him, we'll bring him back to the most loving home he could ever imagine living in. Yeah, Kushina smiled tearfully, that's my heart's desire, right now. I don't care anymore about what he did to Naomi, or whether his reasons were just or not. I was going to punish him for it, but, right now, I just want to hold him in my arms and tell him that things will be different from now on. Yeah, Tsunade agreed, and when we get you out of here, we can go ahead and make plans for a more organized search, okay? Kushina nodded. Minato was still in his office, just hoping that there wouldn't be any more trouble, or any more bad news. He had already had enough to last a decade. Unfortunately, fate would not be so kind to him. Lord Hokage, he heard someone ask. He looked up to see a medical ninja at his door. Please, come in, he invited the man, offering him a seat. Sir, I wish I had better news for you. This concerns your wife and daughter. My wife? What wrong with her? She was admitted to the hospital today for dehydration, chakra exhaustion and sleep deprivation. Apparently, she'd been scouring the outskirts of Konoha searching for your missing son. Minato's teeth ground together as his former son was mentioned. Though the medic didn't notice, she hadn't slept in more than 3 days, and she hadn't been eating, either. She just kept pushing herself to the brink of exhaustion, even to the point of near death. Minato's eyes went wide as he jumped up. How is she now? Is she alright? She's fine, sir, the medic assured him. She'll actually be released in a few short hours after Lady Tsunade gives her the all-clear. Makoto Uchiha and Kyuki Ichiraku were able to get her to the hospital in time for her to be treated so that she would make a full recovery. So that's why they were there. Why didn't they tell me about Kushina? He wondered, both surprised and alarmed that he wasn't made aware of the situation. He brought himself back to the present moment. You said you also had news of my daughter. Yes, sir. You'd better brace yourself for this, the medic responded, causing Minato to worry greatly. What is it? He asked. We've found another injury on her person. What do you mean, another injury? Sir, the blow she took to her abdomen caused irreversible damage to her ovaries and womb. I'm afraid she's been rendered infertile. I'm sorry, sir. She'll never be able to have children. Minato allowed the news to sink in. This was bad. Naruto was no longer part of his family, but now he no longer had a viable heir. If Naomi couldn't have children, the Namikaze family would die out with her. This realization brought a look of uncontrollable rage on his face as he made a very dark promise to himself, you littling bastard. I'll find you and I'll make your life a living hell for what you've done to me and my precious daughter. Chapter 4. Allies, Consequences, and Plans. It had been 5 days since Naruto left Wave to return to the time chamber. He had been able to master his Super Saiyan 2 form, as Goku-sensei called it, to the same level as his Super Saiyan form. Naruto, who was in his original form, now, was currently walking into Iron Country with his power level suppressed down to 0 as to not attract any attention. Thank God Goku-sensei had me train in energy suppression as well as energy detection, Naruto thought as he walked down the road. About 10 minutes later Naruto suddenly heard a loud ruckus and a scream. Without a second thought, Naruto took off towards the ruckus and scream. When Naruto got to the origin of the noise he saw a little girl on the ground unconscious with 5 grown men standing over her, looking at her with cross expressions on their faces. Naruto did not even take time to call out to them before taking action. He instant transmissioned behind one of them, and chopped him at the base of his skull knocking him out. He then used his speed to appear behind the other men and knock them out in a similar fashion. Once he had them all knocked out, he placed 4 limb restriction seals on the 5 men. The seals restricted their movements like his weight seals did, and he set them to about the weight he had on right now. With the men taken care of for now, Naruto decided to attend to the child, who had a few bruises but nothing serious. He gently woke her, and as she opened her eyes she began crying and screaming her head off. He quickly wrapped her in a hug, trying to calm her down. Shish, everything is going to be alright, you're safe now. Those bad men won't hurt you anymore, he said in a sweet, caring tone. Who are you? The girl asked, fear still evident in her voice. My name is Naruto, and yours is? He asked in the same tone when he began to speak to the girl. Sarah, my name is Sarah, she replied, beginning to relax in his presence. Thank you Sarah, now, can you tell where you're from so I can get you home, asks Naruto. She nods, and replies, I live in Iron Country with my grandpa, who is a great samurai general. Naruto chuckles at her enthusiasm. Alright Sarah, can you tell me what your grandpa looks like, so I can recognize him, he asks Sarah, as she nods. He's my GG, and he has long, furry whiskers under his nose and an even longer furry whisker on his chin that goes down to his shoulders. He also has the top of his head wrapped up like a mummy, she giggles as she defines his features. Okay, thanks Sa-chan. Now, how would you like me to give you a piggyback ride? Naruto asks, as Sarah pouts cutely for the nickname then gets an ecstatic expression hearing the offer of a piggyback ride. Sarah begins to scramble onto his back as Naruto glances at the 5 men on the ground unconscious. The men begin to rise and float in the air, and Sarah is mesmerized by this. Alright Sa-chan. Hold on tight okay, Naruto says as she nods. He then takes off like a bullet with Sarah giggling all the way, while the unconscious, floating men stayed with him. An hour of walking later brought Sarah and Naruto to a village gate. Naruto then sets Sarah back on the ground, much to her disappointment, and lets the floating men fall in a heap on the ground. Suddenly, Naruto and Sarah are surrounded by 4 samurai. Sarah-sama, it is good to see you alive and unharmed. Mifune-sama may not show it, but he has been exceedingly worried, says ONW of the samurai, who is glaring at Naruto with distrust. So, you're one of the fools that took Sarah. He didn't even get to finish his sentence when Sarah shouted out, "No. Naruto didn't hurt me. He saved me from the bad men behind us. Look, I just want to get this Sa-chan back to her grandfather as well as meeting your leader. There are some things that I want to discuss with your leader," Naruto says, trying to defuse the tense situation. The two men looked back and forth between Naruto and the two bad men, as Sarah had called them, before nodding and ordering, "Come with us." General Mifune was going through some reports of the nations that surrounded his humble little land. News of the goings-on within the elemental nations, while rarely affecting his country directly, could still have unintended effects on his nation, their economy, their political stability, their sovereignty. At least if some power-hungry fool got too big for his britches and tried invading, it had happened before, even if it was never successful. 6 people suddenly appeared in his office: his granddaughter Sarah, 4 of his samurai guards, and, who was that? The 6th person was a black-haired boy with 3 strange etchings on each of his cheeks and a mile-wide grin. "Mifune-sama, your granddaughter was found just a short time ago, and we have bought you her savior," spoke the leader of the 4 samurai. "Savior?" Mifune asked rhetorically before turning to the stranger and asking in a calm, collected tone, "Who are you and why do you have my granddaughter practically wrapped around your legs?" "My name is Naruto, Mifune-sama, and I came across your granddaughter with 5 grown men while entering Iron Country. She appeared distressed, leading me to believe that she was with them against her will, so I did what any decent person would do. I saved her and brought her to your village to return her to her family, where I was escorted to your office now," spoke Naruto in a respectful tone. I thank you for saving my granddaughter. Is there anything I can do to repay you?" asks Mifune. "Well, would it be possible for you to help me with my project? Currently, I am starting a new village, and I would like allies," Naruto says before beginning his story. He then tells Mifune about his past, excluding his Saiyan heritage, to saving Wave, and his plans concerning the new village. "Well, Naruto-san, that is quite a goal that you have there, and since I owe you a huge favor and I'm curious to where this will lead, I'll make an alliance between Iron Country and the future Namagakure," Mifune replies. "Thank you Mifune-sama for this opportunity." Naruto bows to him, grateful for Mifune setting up an alliance with him. Just as Naruto is about to leave, he feels something clamp on his leg. He looks down to see Sarah holding his leg in a vice grip. "You're not going to leave yet, are you?" Sarah asks in a scared tone, not wanting her new friend to leave so soon. Naruto bends down to look at her eye to eye. "No, I'll stay for a few days, so, right now, how would you like to escort me through your home?" Naruto placates and asks her all at once. Sarah looks ecstatic about Naruto staying for a few days. Both of them leave Mifune's office to explore the village. When Naruto and Sarah left, and were out of earshot, one of the remaining samurai asks Mifune, "Mifune-sama, are you sure that it is wise to let your granddaughter stay with him?" Mifune replies, "Yes, I'm sure that my granddaughter will be quite safe with him considering the fact that he saved her from being taken out of Iron Country. Who knows what would have happened to my granddaughter then?" Naruto and Sarah were currently walking through the village, and Sarah was showing him all the sights. It was getting to around lunchtime, so they decided to stop at a small restaurant of Sarah's choice. After having their fill, they begin to sightsee once more. Then, Naruto notices a strange shop, and asks Sarah about the store, and she replies, "It's a weapon store. You want to go in?" Naruto nods his head as he and Sarah proceed to walk towards the weapon store. As Naruto opened the door, a bell rung, alerting the owner that he had customers, which he then greeted Naruto and Sarah. "Hello my dear good sir, is there anything that I can help you with today?" The owner asked in his most hospitable tone, trying to coax his newest customer into buying something. "Yes, I am looking for a sword of good quality," replies Naruto, ignoring the tone of the owner. "All right then sir, if you'll just follow me. We keep our swords in the back, so you can pick any sword or swords that you fancy," replied the owner. As Naruto, Sarah, and the store owner walked into the back room, Naruto couldn't help but be in awe at the sheer number of swords that the room held. There were broadswords, ninjatus, katanas, tanfos, and any other sort of sword that you could imagine. After a few minutes of browsing through the enormous display of swords, Naruto found a sword that caught his eye. It was a double-edged short sword, think one of Killer Bee's swords, and glanced at the owner. Is all of your weapons forged with chakra-conductive steel? He asks the owner. The owner replies, yes, they are, considering we're in the land of iron, which is the home of samurai. After Naruto and Sarah left the store, Naruto persuaded Sarah to take him to the nearest training ground as to get used to his sword. Naruto began his training in his new sword, but it was a little difficult. He was currently trying to incorporate the use of the sword into his taijutsu style, the Turtle Hermit Fist. After 30 minutes and having little success, he then notices Mifune watching him. Mifune-sama, how long were you there? Naruto asked, curious as to how much Mifune saw. I was watching you for the past 10 minutes, and from what I've seen, that style that you're using has potential, but you need a partner to help it along. Out of curiosity, what was that style that you're using? Mifune asks, intrigued by the black-haired boy's movements. Well, I was just trying to incorporate my new sword into my taijutsu style, the Turtle Hermit Fist, but I'm not having much luck with it, Naruto said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. Boy, I want to see what that taijutsu style of yours is capable of, so with that in mind I want to spar with you, Mifune demanded, interested to see if this boy could be a worthy student. I want to see what you are capable of, that means no holding back. Alright, but you asked for it. Naruto says before blurring out of existence. Mifune's and Naruto's fists met with Naruto instantly matching Mifune's strength. Man, he might be an old geezer, but his strength surpasses Zabuza's. I might actually have some fun in this spar, thought Naruto, while Mifune was having similar thoughts about the young man in front of him. Giving a small smirk, Mifune asks, what do you say we kick things up a bit? With Naruto simply nodding his head. They both increased their respective strengths and began to engage each other once again. The spar carried on for another 15 minutes, and ended when Naruto used his full speed to land a kick on Mifune's chin, knocking him out. Mifune was being helped on his feet after 5 minutes from his foot-induced unconscious state. He then walked towards Naruto. When he was standing directly in front of him, he said, well done Naruto, but you still need help developing that style with a sword, so I would like to extend an offer to help you do just that. Mifune-sama, I am honored that you are willing to help me in this, and I'm eternally grateful for everything that you've done for me thus far, Naruto said in a grateful and respectful tone. Well then, let's begin, Mifune said, as Naruto got an exhilarated look on his face. The last several weeks had not been kind to Minato Namikaze. Ever since word had gotten out about him and Kushina kicking Naruto out of the family, maintaining the village's respect towards him as their leader had been an uphill battle. The majority of the people still supported him, but there was a large enough minority that didn't, that it was causing him a lot of problems. Tyuki Ichiraku hadn't relented on his promise about banning his family from his stand. He had even gone so far as to post a large and very visible sign that said, "This establishment does not serve Namikaze scum." Just who the hell did he think he was? Nothing he did could convince the man to take the sign down. He even tried hiring some thugs to discreetly threaten the man, only to have Makoto, Asuma, Tsunade and Kushina arrive on the scene just in the nick of time to pound the thugs senseless and force them to run off with their tails between their legs. Several more signs like that started showing up around the village. More and more businesses were closing their doors to him and his daughter. He couldn't say his family anymore because Kushina had withdrawn herself from them, and with the daimyo's backing to boot. He didn't even get to see any divorce papers. She had somehow gotten a petition for divorce, annulment and clan separation into the daimyo's hands, gotten him to sign and stamp it into law, and he didn't even know what had happened until the documents had been dropped on his desk with the daimyo's official seal. He still couldn't get that day out of his mind. Even though it had happened over a month ago, he remembered it as vividly as if it happened yesterday. Flashback no jutsu. Minato had just received the signed and approved petitions for divorce and clan separation that Kushina had apparently submitted to the daimyo behind his back. His daughter was still in the hospital, apparently needing her body purged of some kind of strange energy that he guessed Naruto had infused into her when he attacked her. She wouldn't even know what was going on. How was he supposed to tell her about this? Putting that aside for now, he left a shadow clone to finish up some of the last vestiges of paperwork so that he could get home and talk to Kushina about all of this. Granted, he knew that she was upset about him leading her on about Naruto being able to remain at the house after they had disowned him, but was she really taking things this far? Speeding home, he could only hope that Kushina was still there so that he could talk her out of making a horrible mistake. The moment he got there, he threw open the door and sped to the bedroom that Kushina had taken to sleeping in after she'd left his bed. Kushina! He cried out desperately, as he entered the room only to see her packing, with Tsunade and Makoto helping her. Kushina stopped what she was doing and turned to Minato with a glare that was icy enough to give him the shivers. With the urgency that you're showing, I can only assume that you got copies of the divorce and separation documents. Am I right? Kushina, why? He asked loudly, shock and confusion written all over his face. You know why, she answered him straightforwardly. You deliberately led me on, and made me believe that we could keep Naruto here and be his parents after we named Naomi our heir. You knew that you were lying to me, and I also know that you've been lying to me about my son from the start of his life. Kushina's addressing of Naruto as her son was not lost on him. He frantically began to try explaining himself. Kushina, please, just listen to me. I'm done listening to you. She interrupted him harshly, causing him to flinch. I'm done listening to your lies. I'm done being led on by you, the man who I'm supposed to be able to trust more than any other. You betrayed me. You betrayed my son. You've betrayed the office of the Hokage and made a complete and utter mockery of what the will of fire is supposed to mean. You really are nothing more than a worthless hypocrite. Did you think that I would just accept what you've done to my son and move on? Or were you just hoping that I would never learn the truth? Kushina, please, I can see that you're angry with me, but if you just give me a chance, we can work this out. Work this out? Kushina shouted incredulously. You have not only allowed my son to be beaten by people in this village, but you threw him out of our family, and then you laughed at me when I told you that I wanted to keep him at home, and you think we can work this out? Tell me, Minato, how exactly do you expect to work this out? If I explain to you why I did what I did, would you forgive me for what I've done and for lying to you about it? He asked hopefully. No, I won't. The only way I would even consider forgiving you is for you to undo everything you've done to my son. Bring the people who have abused him to justice, and give him back not only everything you've stolen from him, but give him retribution for all of your wrongdoings against him as well. And even then, the possibility of my forgiving you is a very big, if. I'm sorry, Kushina. I won't do that, he began anew, only to be cut off from her. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Our divorce is final, our clan separation is final, and my only concern now is finding my son an heir. Minato gritted his teeth in fury as Kushina called Naruto her heir, and giving him the home that he deserves and that you've always denied him. Goodbye, Hokage-sama. With that, Kushina grabbed the scrolls that she had just finished sealing all of her and her clan's belongings in and marched past him, Tsunade and Makoto hot on her heels, also shooting him glares that could burn through steel. Realizing that he had just lost the love of his life over all of this, he dropped to his knees and started to weep bitterly through clenched teeth. Kai. Minato sat in his chair, brooding in his thoughts of that bastard that he had once called a son. This was all his fault. If he hadn't been born, then none of this would have ever happened. His baby girl would be able to grow up and live a happy life, knowing the love of both her parents and not just his love. That was something that hurt him just as much or more than Kushina leaving him. She had all but disowned Naomi, just because she thought that Naruto was the trash that he really was. Why should she hate her daughter just because she had an opinion about the truth? It didn't make sense to him. Sighing sadly, he continued to finish his paperwork so that he could leave the office and visit his little girl. Naomi Namikaze was numb. She had been for some time, ever since that awful day when her mother told her she wanted nothing more to do with her. And over what? She just told her the truth. Why should she be punished for that? She went over the encounter in her mind once more as she had done countless times already since it happened last week, hoping that this one time it would be different, and she'd be able to make sense out of what happened. Flashback no jutsu. She was sitting in her bed, her jaw still wired shut from when her bastard brother had broken it. Why had he gone and done that? All she did was tell him the truth. So what if she called him worthless trash? Are you being insulting to a duck by calling it a duck? Everybody said that he was worthless trash, and they always tried to get him in trouble, so didn't that make it the right thing to do? Sure, She made up stories about him that weren't true, but that didn't matter. He was worthless trash and he needed to know his place. And what was this weird energy stuff that the medics found inside her that was keeping her from healing faster? What did the trash do to her? She was brought out of her musings about him when her mother entered her room. "Ka-chan," she said through wired jaws, able to at least speak even if it was mumbled. She tried to smile, though it still hurt. Her efforts to smile ceased, however, when she saw the look on her mother's face. Kushina wasn't smiling like she normally was when she saw her. Granted, it had been 5 or 6 weeks since she'd seen her mother, but the flinty, stern look that she was giving her was unnerving. "Ka-chan, what's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked nervously. "Young lady, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I expect you to answer with the complete truth," she said sternly. "Will you do that?" Naomi was taken aback by her mother's tone. She gulped and nodded nervously. "What did you say or do to your brother to cause him to attack you?" Naomi's eyes went wide before she narrowed them, answering the question. "I simply told him the truth. That you and Tu-chan love me and not him, and that I was getting everything, and that he was being thrown out like the worthless trash that he was." "Why?" Kushina's steely glare turned to one of shocked disappointment. It caused Naomi to feel uncomfortable, as though she did something wrong. "Who told you those things?" Kushina asked. "Tu-chan, for one. And so did everyone else in the village, they all hate him, so he must be worthless." Naomi answered, surprised that her mother would treat her as though she'd misbehaved somehow. "Well, that isn't true, at least not for me. I never loved him any less than I love you, even if I had forgotten that for a long time. But I've learned that many of the things I've heard about your brother simply weren't true," Kushina began. "How many of the things you told me about him were lies?" Naomi looked at her mother as though she was about to grow a third eye. "What difference does it make?" "It makes all the difference in the world to me, Naomi. Now answer me," Kushina demanded. "Why? The worthless trash is out of our family and out of our hair. You were one of the people who threw him out, so what does it matter?" She fired back defensively. "Naomi, I'm not going to ask again," Kushina growled while releasing some killing intent, causing Naomi to sweat slightly. "Answer my question." "Fine," she yelled out in fear, causing her mother's ki to subside. "Just about everything I ever told you was a lie."